Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Became the Demon Warrior Part 4, The End. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Naruto was taking in a lot of air. He didn't think the training would be this tough. He was trying to stop his body from hurting by sitting on his hands and knees. It felt like someone had run over his body with 1,000 horses. As the young man slowly got back on his feet, he could feel his muscles screaming at him to stop. Just wanted him to take a break before he tried to do more training. "You're doing well, Naruto, but you're trying to use your powers way too much." Jiraiya was looking unhappy. Jiraiya ran his hand through his hair as he tried to think of something that could help him. "Naruto, you need to fight more like a human. We don't know what will happen if you use your demonic chakra. You could go crazy and kill everyone instead of protecting them for all we know." Naruto really did get scared by that. He didn't want to lose control. When he had in the past, he was just scared. The young man pushed himself up and nodded his head as he asked, "What do you mean? Why can't I use my evil chakra?" He turned his head to the side as if he didn't understand. It seemed like he couldn't help but use his demonic chakra. "If I'm a demon, how can I not use it? You are made of human blood. You do have a human parent, don't you?" Jiraiya asked, raising an eyebrow. "I do. My dad hasn't talked much about my mom, so I don't know what happened to her." Then Naruto looked away and said, "I think I look more like my mother than my father, since I don't look anything like him. I just don't understand why he won't talk about her." Naruto let out a soft sigh, then sat down on the grass and looked at his claws. The young man shook his head and made a small frown as he asked, "Do you think we could take a break?" "Sure," Jiraiya said with a sigh. Naruto gave a small smile, glad that at least he could take a break. But he had been thinking about one thing since he first heard about Albaido. When he was young, he had only one question about the stories he had heard. How did Albaido turn bad and try to take over the village? With a frown on his face, Naruto asked. His eyes only showed curiosity, but he was also worried that he was only bringing back bad memories. In fact, the pure look of pain and torment on Jiraiya's face was enough to make the younger man change his mind. Jiraiya looked up at the sky and sighed softly. Naruto thought he wouldn't get a response, but Jiraiya finally spoke up. "Everything began when Rin died." Jiraiya frowned and asked Albaido, "Are you okay?" A few days had passed since Rin had died, and Albaido seemed to shut himself away in his room. At the time, Kakashi was on his own little mission. He wanted to go to a village he had been to when he was younger. At the moment, it was just Jiraiya and Albaido, and Jiraiya was getting more and more worried. "Albaido, please get out of your room," Jiraiya said with a sigh. Taking a deep breath, Jiraiya slowly opened the door and just stared at the young teenager as he saw something that surprised Jiraiya. Albaido was looking at himself in the mirror, but it was his eyes that caught his attention. Albaido's eyes were red, and there were small black dots in them. He finally got his Sharingan to work. Had he lost the girl he had loved for so long? Albaido was a bit of a short teen. He had black hair that stuck up in spikes, and his eyes were usually black. Albaido turned to look at his teacher and said, "I don't know what happened, Master Jiraiya. I'm not sure because my eyes just changed." Jiraiya knew, though. He knew that this was all because Rin had died. "I'm not sure what I should do." The older man walked over to his student and patted his bare shoulder to try to calm him down. Even though it looked like the younger man couldn't stop shaking, his hands were tightly gripping his black pants as he tried to stop shaking out of fear. "The shock of her death had stirred up your family's bloodline." Albaido turned and glared at his teacher as he yelled, "Don't talk about her that way." In the dim light, his eyes were bright red. Jiraiya didn't think he could move. He didn't even think someone could freeze him like this. Before he walked away, the young man seemed to have calmed down. "I'm sorry, master." He turned away and tried to get his eyes back to normal by looking at his black-clad lap. Jiraiya let out a soft sigh. He knew he had to help his student in some way. Albaido was not as strong as Kakashi or as smart as Rin. Still, he had one thing that made him stronger than most people. He was kind, and he would be taught to be a powerful palace member. "I'll teach you how to control your eyes, Albaido. I know how, and I can make sure you're strong enough to do it and keep it safe." Albaido turned his head back up, blinked his Sharingan eyes, and then smiled. "I can be strong, perhaps even enough to be the furious fox." Jiraiya gave a small chuckle and nodded his head. Albaido just smiled. It would be the first time in days that he could smile. Jiraiya couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief because he had already started training Albaido right then. The training had taken him 5 years. Every day, Albaido was getting stronger and stronger, taking on missions that helped him get stronger and more powerful. Jiraiya couldn't tell a lie, because it looked like Albaido was turning into a real hero. Even Kakashi wasn't able to do it. Albaido's sadness grew over the years because he could never let go of his love for Rin. Albaido, too, seemed to have changed over time. He seemed to have lost the heart he used to have as a result of his training. Jiraiya, though, was losing face because of that. Only his training mattered to him. It's time for you to see Grandmaster Hiruzen, Albaido, so I might finally get the scroll, Master Jiraiya. Albaido asked with a sly grin on his face. Jiraiya made a small frown. He was a little sad that Albaido didn't have that big smile on his face like he used to. It seemed like almost all of Albaido's good qualities had left his body. Had losing Rin made him just go dark? Yes, Albaido, because I think you are strong enough to be the Furious Fox, Jiraiya said with a smile as he led the younger man to the grand hall where Hiruzen and the scroll were kept. He just couldn't wait, especially since Jiraiya had been waiting for this day. A day when the village would be safe forever and ever. Even so, he had a strange feeling that was trying to tell him something. Something strange was coming from behind him that made him want to run away. He just shrugged it off. All that mattered to him was that the scroll was finally going to be used for what it was meant to be used for. The young man took a soft breath in and smiled happily as he opened the gates that led to the grand hall. Master Hiruzen, I brought Albaido with me because I think he's the chosen warrior. Hiruzen looked at Albaido and made a small frown. Albaido wore a simple black muscle shirt and tight long black pants. He was barefoot, of course. Albaido's training over the years had made his hair grow a little, and his body had become more muscular. He was strong, that much was true, but there was one problem with the whole situation. Albaido's heart was filled with nothing but darkness, and there was no more room for love. When Rin died, his heart was closed to the people around him. The boy did, in fact, help people in the village. He helped people, but the man only cared about being strong and powerful. His eyes had become stronger, but they were still not as strong as they could be. Hiruzen closed his eyes and told Albaido, I'm sorry, but you're not the chosen warrior. After saying that, he started to walk away, leaving Albaido and Jiraiya shocked. Albaido, I am sorry. Jiraiya said this with a frown. Albaido muttered a bit before he turned around and pushed Jiraiya out of the way. Don't stand in my way, he yelled, and his voice was filled with anger and rage that he had never seen anyone else show. As Albaido started to walk away, his eyes started to glow red. Jiraiya didn't know what his student was going to do, but he thought he should meditate. Maybe his student could become something else that would make up for this. Jiraiya started to think about what he could do to help his student by meditating. He could only think that Albaido could teach the true warrior if he came back in this generation. Or he could leave a scroll so that when the time came, he could help the warrior. Yes, that could work out for the warrior if he or she hadn't already chosen that path. The older man pushed himself up and walked out of the hall so he could go talk to his student. He took a few deep breaths. He looked out the window and saw that it was night. With a frown, he walked around the palace to figure out where he was. On the surface, it looked like he had gone to the library to read. At least, that's what one of the palace guards says. Jiraiya walked toward the library with a frown, wondering what Albaido might want to know about his eyes. The Sharingan shouldn't have anything else to teach in the first place. Albaido. He asked if he was still there by calling out. Albaido whispered, yes, master, but his voice was a little scary. Jiraiya walked around the corner and frowned as he looked at the back of his student. I came up with something for you to do, Albaido. Since you weren't chosen, I thought you could be the chosen's teacher if it's meant to be in this life. He tried to sound happy and excited about the idea, but all he got was nothing. Jiraiya was worried and didn't understand why Albaido wasn't talking. It seemed like Albaido had lost the last bit of himself when he turned down the offer to be the Furious Fox. Albaido, do you feel okay? He asked out of worry. Slowly, Albaido turned around and stared at the older man with a wide, twisted smile. The dim light from the candles made his eyes shine, and he smiled even more. Jiraiya moved away because he was almost afraid of his student. Howdy, master. I was just learning more about my eyes. It looks like my eyes have another power that no one has tried in more than a few hundred years. He gave a soft laugh and put the scroll down while whispering, I have a better way to live my life. I just need to find a few friends. He laughed some more and started to leave, or at least he did until Jiraiya grabbed his wrist. Jiraiya couldn't let this happen, and he couldn't let it keep happening. How could he have gone so quickly down into darkness just because he was turned down? Albaido, you can't do this. Why? Is this because you didn't get picked? Oh, that's not all, he said with a laugh as he broke free of his teacher's grip and started to walk away. He couldn't let this happen, so he ran up to Albaido and tried to stop him. Albaido spun around, kicked his teacher away, and then laughed. Master, you can't stop me. I'm stronger than you ever could be. Jiraiya moaned as he tried to push himself up and talk, but the pain was making it hard for him to say anything. Before he went into the night, Albaido laughed. Jiraiya had spent a few days looking for his student. He wanted to find the thing he had made and stop it. But no matter what he tries, he can't find him. At least, until the day Jiraiya realized that no matter how long he lives, he would never be able to forget what happened. Albaido stood at the edge of the village with an army of demons behind him. Jiraiya got Grandmaster Hiruzen because he was the only one who could help stop Albaido. The once proud hero just stood at the edge of the village, his eyes glowing in the dark. "Albaido, stop being crazy," Jiraiya yelled. "Why do I need to? You told me I'd be the furious fox if I trained until my bones broke, and I did. While I worked hard to make my eyes stronger, this is what you give me back. With me not being named the chosen warrior." He narrowed his eyes and said, "Ever since I let Rin die because I couldn't get the dream, I've wanted to make up to her." He then said with narrowed eyes, "You can go fuck yourselves." When he heard those words, he ran forward to attack. Jiraiya went to attack because he wanted to make up for what he did wrong with Albaido, for making so many empty promises and telling him things he shouldn't have heard, which only made him feel hopeless. He had a dream that he could never come true. He made a mistake here, and he needed to fix it before it was too late. When Albaido's eyes flashed, the older man stopped moving, as if time had slowed down around him, even though he knew it couldn't be done. What the heck was going on with him? Albaido smiled before he seemed to keep running. Jiraiya was sure that Albaido would just knock him down, but Albaido just seemed to go right through him, as if he hadn't been there to begin with. The white-haired master couldn't believe this had happened. He turned and stared at his student and his teacher as he went to yell at them. He can't let his teacher die because of a mistake he made. "Master," Jiraiya yelled. Before he could say anything else, the Grandmaster shot out his hand and hit a pressure point, which made him fall over. Jiraiya just stared at the two older men in shock, but his eyes soon moved to the demons that were growling at them. The older man walked over to Jiraiya and stood in front of him. "Jiraiya, stand behind me," he said. He whispered a few words, which made the younger man stare in shock as he saw his master glow brightly with chakra. From the ground up, a shield was starting to form. He watched as the shield began to form around and above the village. Jiraiya was shocked and asked, "Master, what did you do?" "I made a barrier so that no demons can get into this village. As long as no one with great power breaks the shield, the village will be safe." He looked down at the unconscious man near his feet and said, "We'll tie him up and send him to prison." "I am sorry, Jiraiya." Jiraiya looked at the young man for a second before taking his eyes off of him. He couldn't stand the idea that his student had turned bad. He couldn't stand the idea that, even though he had good intentions, Albaido had turned bad anyway. He took a deep breath in and whispered, "Just send him away. I need to talk to the others about what's going on with Albaido." In all honesty, he was dreading this with all of his heart. He didn't think he'd be able to tell anyone the truth about how much he hurt. But he just knew that he wouldn't be the same man after this. The fact that Albaido went from being a good-hearted boy to a bad man was too much for the master to handle. He knew that this was only the beginning of the new world, where demons would never be able to get through to attack the village. But he wondered if anyone would be able to live a peaceful life even with the barrier. At the time, he was thinking about a lot of things, but all he knew was that he had to be careful. But after that, his life was never the same again. He never smiled or was nice to anyone, and he was mean to anyone who tried to get close to him. Jiraiya knew he never wanted to feel this way again. Never ever. Naruto could only stare because he didn't know that Albaido had been through something like that. The master must have been hurt more than he let on. It must have hurt a lot to see a student turn into a monster like that. As he turned away, he wondered if it was because of his eyes and the Sharingan, or if this was just the beginning for the man. He must have started going down that dark path after the death of that Rin girl. "Promise me, Naruto, that you won't use demon chakra. I don't want to feel that hurt again." Jiraiya sighed and then held out what looked like a normal bracer that he could put on his arm. The young man tilted his head up and looked at the master with blue eyes filled with confusion. "This thing will hold back your demonic chakra. Naruto, you have both human and demon chakra in your body. Please keep this on because I don't know what your demon chakra will do to you." Naruto's frown got a bit deeper, but he still nodded. He didn't want to have to deal with the pain of becoming his demonic self. The young man took a soft breath and reached over to grab the bracer. He put it on his arm and stared at the gold metal as it stuck to his arm like it was made for him. He didn't know why he was in this strange situation, but he knew that he had to do it. He had to do this, and he would make sure nothing got in the way. "Master, I'm not going to become Albaido. I don't have power of the eyes like him, but I do have other skills. I have nothing to worry about." He gave the older man a smile in hopes of making him feel better. He couldn't become what Albaido was, and he wouldn't. The difference was that Albaido had a whole army of demons behind him, while Naruto was just one demon with no one else. Not like that, at least. If he had his own army, it would be because he trusted them, not because he could control them. But the fact that Albaido could control demons was strange to him. How could he even start to control demons? Jiraiya calmly answered the younger man as he turned away. Albaido's eyes can take away a demon's willpower and turn them back to their natural instincts. He could order them to attack and kill anyone he wanted. He then looked away and said, I didn't think he would have tried something like that, though, because no one in his family had tried it for so long that it had been forgotten. He scratched his head and said, don't worry. It shouldn't work on you because the power only affects true demons. Real blood. Demons that have never eaten a person. You, Naruto, seem to be made of human blood. Jiraiya said with a smile. It makes sense, because his father is human, so it just makes sense. Still, he couldn't help but wonder what, besides his father, had made him human. No matter what, Iruka was his father. So, since I have human blood in me, I shouldn't worry about anything, right? I won't have to be afraid of being ruled over. As Naruto talked, Jiraiya nodded his head. Well, now you don't have to worry about that. He laughed a little and then put his arms up over his head and looked up. Yes, he wouldn't have to worry about being in charge, which was a good thing. Even though Albaido had trained for his whole life, the battle would still be hard. Naruto himself hadn't been training for that long yet. I'm ready to go back to training, Master Jiraiya, Naruto said with a soft breath. He laughed a little and thought that if he was going to fight an ex-hero, he might as well be as ready as he would ever be. Jiraiya took a moment to look up at the younger man before he laughed. Naruto and Albaido were very different from each other. He was thankful for that. He couldn't help but wonder what he would have brought into his life after this fight. There were still a lot of different things that could happen. If the prophecy was true, there was still a chance that Naruto would turn bad. But he also knew that he could beat Albaido and save the village, just like how Grandmaster Hiruzen had said would happen. Okay, Naruto, we'll go back to training, but keep in mind that I might have to up the level a little to get you done faster. Jiraiya said this with a smile and a small laugh. Naruto didn't care, because he knew that was the only thing that would help him finish this training mission. He only hoped that in the end, it would be enough to beat Albaido. Naruto took a soft breath and flexed his fingers as he said, Master Jiraiya, I'm ready for whatever you bring. As he rushed forward, he gave a small grin. The battle was going to be fine, and Jiraiya didn't have to worry about losing himself because he no longer hated or was angry at the man with blonde and red hair. Now, all he had to do was finish his training and take a look at the scroll himself. It did make him wonder what the secret was to being the Furious Fox to begin with. Time would have to tell. Naruto was lying on the grass and looking up at the sky. It was the last night of his training on the mountain, and he was glad. It wasn't that he couldn't handle the training anymore, in fact, it wasn't that. It was that he was getting a bad feeling. Was Hinata okay? Or did she worry about him while he was away on his training mission? The young man closed his eyes for a moment and thought about what would happen when Albaido came to the village. Could he win over him? Or would he be the one to lose in the end? Jiraiya said that he was done training, that he could now fight like a normal person. But is that enough to beat Albaido? From what he could tell, he was mostly evil. Even if he lost all of his demon power, which is rare, he has never fully turned human. If he wanted to fight Albaido, would he have to stop being a demon? Or is there a better way to answer this question? Ugh, so many things are going through my mind. Naruto growled, but then he covered his mouth with his hand. No, he can't be mean. He is no longer allowed to act like a demon. He needs to act like a person. It was still on his arm because of this. It stopped all of his evil powers, which drained him a lot. He hadn't heard Kurama in a while. Now that he thought about it, did the bracer also stop him? That made him sad because Kurama was the only person who knew about his demonic powers and could teach him how to use them. Naruto reached out and gently grabbed the bracer. As he thought about Kurama, he rubbed it against the cold metal. Maybe Kurama is trying to get out of his chakra by banging on it or something. After taking his hand off the bracer and closing his eyes, the young man pushed himself up. He didn't think he would have to wait any longer, but he had a vague feeling that he would. He knew it was Albaido because he knew something was coming. He didn't know how long it would last. Wait, he doesn't have any demonic power right now, so how was he still able to feel something? Naruto. Naruto yelled and turned around when he heard a voice. Behind him stood Jiraiya, who was also wide awake. Had he been thinking so much that he hadn't seen the older man standing behind him until now? Are you okay? He asked with a frown because he was worried about the student. In all honesty, it was the first time he had seen the older man show real emotion in a long time. But even so, it was a lot better than the man's face when they first met. Naruto stood up straight and nodded his head as he said, I'm fine, sir. I'm just deep in thought. Jiraiya gave a small laugh and then walked over to the younger man. What are you going to teach me now, Jiraiya? With a frown on his face, Naruto asked. Well, thanks to the bracer, you have learned to fight like a human and not use your demon chakra. But I don't feel much human chakra coming from you, so I'm thinking we might need to meditate to open your human chakra. Okay, that made sense to him. He had to do that to collect his demonic chakra after all. Why didn't he use his human chakra? Still, it made him a little bit curious. What should he do? Just like last time, or was he supposed to do something different this time? Sit down near the water, close your eyes and let your heart and mind open up. This time, you should be able to connect with your chakra. Jiraiya said this with a smile. Naruto made a small frown and shrugged his shoulders. He thought that would work. He didn't sound like he would have trouble with it, so that would give him something to do. The young man walked over to the lake and sat down, then closed his eyes, crossed his legs, and put his hands on his knees. He took a few deep breaths in and out because Jiraiya had told him to do so. Even though it would be hard for him to open his heart, he knew he had to be careful at the same time. Jiraiya, how would I know in the first place that this works? He asked because he was curious about what would happen if he did. Sure, he was able to do it easily with Kurama's help. He was still in the field, but Kurama was standing in front of him. But it was going to be hard to say this time. But for all he knew, he might end up in a dark room that never ends or starts, like an empty space or something similar. Naruto took a deep breath and tried to calm down again. But the fact that Jiraiya didn't do anything was starting to bother him. Jiraiya, don't you have something to say to me? I want to know how I would know. Naruto opened his eyes as he went to tell the older man what was on his mind. He thought he was being ignored, but when he did, he saw that he was in a place that looked a lot like Kurama, except that it was missing the Sakura tree. He ended up in a field of sunflowers instead. What's up? He said it with a sad face. Naruto got to his feet and looked around, wondering where he was and where he was going. Was this where his body's chakra was? He didn't know, but he knew he had to be careful in this area. He thought, at least, that there must be some kind of test here. Finally, you've made it, said a voice that was soft and soothing. Naruto blinked in surprise. He didn't think he'd find someone for his human chakra who seemed so not like Kurama. When Naruto turned around, he saw a woman in front of him. She had long, dark hair and brown eyes that were soft. As she looked at Naruto, she just smiled. He saw that he was only a few inches taller than she was, which was something, but he was still taller than the average man. When he looked at the woman again, he saw that she was pale, maybe even paler than most people. But she didn't look sick at all. Instead, she looked healthy and strong. The woman was dressed in a simple white robe. There was nothing unusual about her choice of clothes, but what could he expect from his own chakra realm? Was that the word he wanted? He didn't know why, but something about her seemed to make sense to him. He had no idea, but he felt like he had met her before. Naruto had a sudden thought of a picture. It was quick, but it felt like someone had stabbed him in the head and the heart. The vision took over the woman, and in her place was a woman in a simple yellow and brown kimono. Her hair was red, like Kurama's, and her brown eyes were soft and loving. Still, it went away as quickly as it had come, making Naruto hiss in pain. What was he thinking? What was her name? Why did he feel like he's met her somewhere before? God, all of this was a mess. The woman asked Naruto, "Are you okay, kid?" This made Naruto groan and look up at her. About what did she talk? Why did she say young one to him? She couldn't be older than him, because if she was a spirit of his chakra, she would be the same age as him, right? I'm fine. Who are you? Naruto asked as he stood up straight again and looked the woman in the eyes. He was confused by how he felt, but he was also curious, which made him wonder. When the young man looked around, he couldn't figure out why they were in a field of sunflowers. Was there a point to all of this, or was there something else going on? The woman just smiled happily. Her smile was bright and warm, like the sunflowers that grew all around them. All he could think was that if she were real, any man would be lucky to have her as a wife. But he wanted someone else to be his wife, but he knew it couldn't happen. Hello, I'm Sachai. I am your human chakra's spirit. She said it with a smile on her face once more. So, she is the spirit of his human chakra, but what would he have to do to use it? After all, in order to use Kurama, he had to fight the demon, who thought he would use his power to hurt people. Naruto's arms were crossed over his chest as he thought deeply. He wondered what the man would have to do next. But Sachai just stood there, even though he was thinking. This gave him time to think. I know this must be too much for you to handle, Naruto, but you have to trust me, I don't want to hurt you. If demons don't give me a reason to, I don't hurt them. The young man was shocked when he looked up and saw the woman. Did she somehow know what he was thinking? Or was she able to see what he was thinking because she had the spirit of his chakra? Sachai laughed a little as she gently cupped her cheek with her hand and said, Naruto, calm down. I just want to talk to you. I just want to talk, that's all. Once you do this, you'll finally be able to use your human chakra. He was about to ask where they were going to talk, since he could tell it would go on for a while. He didn't sit down until Sachi gently put her hand on his shoulder and waved her free hand. Some of the sunflowers moved out of the way so they could sit down. He had to agree that it was pretty cool. The fox demon walked over to the open area and sat down while he waited for the woman with brown eyes to do the same. Now tell me what to do. Why do you refuse to use your demon chakra? With a soft smile on her face, Sachi asked. In all honesty, it surprised the young demon that she knew about that. Still, he felt like he should say what he could. He had a lot to say, but he just couldn't, at least not right away. The young man took another look around and thought about where to start. He was thinking about how he should tell her his story. But the young woman spoke up before he could. Is it because you don't want to hurt people? She did. Yes, I've hurt people in the past, and I don't want to do it again. I think I could have killed them because I let myself get out of hand. People are scared of me. He said the last part in a whisper because he felt like he was going to cry. He tried to do it, but he just couldn't. He didn't want to cry right now, especially in front of someone he didn't know. Even if she was part of his chakra. That's why you fought with them. Because you're scared, afraid of who you are. With a soft smile on her face, Sachi said. Naruto turned around to look at her, but when he did, he turned away. He didn't think he could face anyone. Okay, you're right. He's scared of hurting other people, but there's more to it than that. I don't want to be a demon in a village full of people. People are afraid of me because they think I'll kill them or take their children if I go out at night. Naruto lifted his clawed hand and said, I don't think I could be accepted, so I changed my appearance to look more human so I could fit in. The young man looked up at the sky and whispered, no matter what I do, people hate me, are afraid of me, and try to stay away from me as much as possible. Soon, he heard soft giggling next to him, which made him turn and look at her. At least, he wanted to ask her what was so funny, but she got there first again. You make me think of someone I knew in the past. Huh? What was she trying to say? Wasn't she born from within his chakra? Or was she a spirit that seemed to merge with his chakra when he was born? Sachi smiled softly and lovingly as she looked over at Naruto. A long time ago, I knew a powerful man. He was so powerful that he could easily wipe out the village where I lived. He never wanted to hurt anyone, though. In reality, all he wanted to do was keep the villagers safe. Sachi said this with a dreamy smile on her face and a soft, happy sigh. Who was that person? Why did she act like she was sick of love to begin with? It seemed like he knew less and less the more she talked. Again letting out a happy sigh, Sachi went on with her story. I came across him in the woods. He was hurt, and it looked like he was about to die. I could either leave him where he was and let him die alone, or I could bring him to my house and save him. She paused in her story and looked away, lost in her thoughts. Did she care that much about this man? Or was she just telling a story? After all, there was no way to know for sure that this woman had ever been alive in the first place. He waited for her to tell more of the story. I took him to my house, which is just outside the village. Because he was a demon, everyone thought I was crazy. Naruto looked at that twice. She got rid of a devil. Willingly. How come? Demons are bad, and people hate them. But she saved him. Wait, was she the woman who saved that demon and married one? What is she doing here? He asked with a frown. Whatever happened to him and you? During the time we spent together, we talked. We spent some time together, I guess just being together. Sachi laughed a little and her cheeks turned pink as she talked about the demon. He was different from other men who asked me out while those men just asked me questions without trying to get to know me. The demon was interested in getting to know me. Was interested in who I was and what I liked and didn't like. We found out a lot about each other. Naruto just looked at her in awe. All of that was done for her by a demon. Wait, why didn't his wounds get better right away? When wounds on demons are treated, they usually heal in a few days. With a frown, Naruto asked. Sachi frowned and turned her head away. Holy weapons were used to hurt him, so it could only be treated by a being who knew how to control such power. Sachi looked at Naruto for a moment, then gave him a small smile. Even though he couldn't move very well for the first few months, he was able to get out of bed now, and then as time went on, he grew stronger. She closed her eyes with a sad smile on her face. To be honest, I thought he'd leave once he was better, leaving my heart broken. Naruto asked, what made you think that? Because no demon has ever stuck around with a person. They always left, whether they were friends or not. But he was different. Sachi smiled as she looked up at the sky. As her frown went away, her smile became more soft and gentle, as if it had never been there to begin with. After he got better, he asked me to be his wife. What? Naruto was shocked and said so. Sure, Kurama had told him this, but he hadn't said much about it. But this woman was telling him a little bit more. But she isn't saying anything about who her husband was. There had to be some hint about who could tell him who this demon was. You might want to find out how to find this village and even the demon's home village. Find out where he came from. At this point, he wasn't sure if that would be possible. Sachai said, "Yes, I was pretty surprised." She laughed and held her hand. He asked me to be his wife. I was so shocked that I didn't think I could say anything. Still, I said yes, and we were together for many happy years. Had a great life together and had a child. When she looked at Naruto, her eyes softened and seemed to cloud over as she thought about the past. Why did she look at him like that? She wasn't telling him something, but he wouldn't bother her about it for now. He stayed by my side, helping me gather supplies for either our home or to help the villagers. That was his duty the whole time we were together until my death. I made him promise me one thing. What was that? He asked with a frown. I made him promise me that when my life came to an end, he was to keep living, not for me, but for our child. That was the only thing I wanted from him and nothing more. The time I had with him were the best times I've had in my life and I would treasure them forever. Smiling gently, she sighed softly as she looked back to Naruto, a cheerful smile on her face. After I passed, I turned myself into chakra so I could help people. I wanted to help people through their lives and their chakra networks until I did what I wanted to do again. What was that? To see my husband again. I don't know whatever happened to him, but I hope that I can see him once more before I can pass on into the spirit world with him, and we can spend eternity with each other. She giggled a little more before leaning back to gaze up at the sky. What does this have to do about my chakra though? Asked Naruto. He tried to be something he's not. He's not a human, but a demon. You can't change who you are, but you can make the best of things. That is the point of the story, Naruto. She asked with a smile on her face. Before he could even say anything though, he found everything around him fading. He was being forced to wake up. Wait, you'll learn the answer someday, Naruto. Then you will be what you are meant to be, she said, her voice slowly fading before he found himself awake once more. Looking around, the young man found himself back at the field with Jiraiya staring at him. The older man just smiled as he said, "I can feel your human chakra. I believe we are ready. Let us return to the palace." Naruto gave a small smile before pushing himself up onto his feet, though he had a feeling in the pit of his stomach that there was something wrong. Naruto couldn't believe that he had been able to awaken both his demonic chakra and his human chakra, but he couldn't feel his demonic chakra. It looked like it had been put away. As he went back with Jiraiya, the young man looked around with a slight frown. He didn't feel like he had been there for very long, but he had been in some kind of trance for most of the time. He didn't know, but he might have been like that for days. He couldn't help but wonder what would happen when they made it back to the palace. Would everything still be okay? Or would the last battle have already begun? The young man rubbed his face and wondered why he felt like something was wrong. He had had this uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach. It was trying to tell him that something wasn't right, that soon something bad was going to happen. "You alright, Naruto?" asked Jiraiya. Naruto turned quickly and stared at the master for a moment before looking away. "I dunno, I sense something bad happening. Or at least something that's about to happen." The young man shook his head and said that he couldn't think of a reason for it. Albaido had no way to have attacked the palace, didn't he? When he opened his mouth to say what he thought, a soft breeze blew past him. The smell it carried almost made his blood freeze. The air was filled with the smell of blood. Blood from the 5, or at least 4 of the 5. Everyone else. Naruto yelled as he ran back to the palace. He didn't care if he used his demon strength or speed. At that moment, he didn't give a damn. All he cared about was getting to the others and making sure they were all right. Sure, don't get him wrong. He was worried about the others, but Hinata was the one he was most worried about. The young man got to the stairs by jumping over bushes. God, he hated these stairs, but damn it, he had to get there on time. He quickly ran up the stairs and headed toward the palace, his blue eyes narrowing and turning red with black pupils for a split second. "Everyone," Naruto yelled, hoping and praying with all his heart that everyone was okay. He didn't know how long he ran or how far, but he knew he had to be careful in case the villain was still around. Once Naruto got to the top, he couldn't help but stare in amazement. The young man tried to catch his breath by taking deep breaths and putting his hands on his knees. God, he wasn't doing well with all this stress. If this kept up, it might even make him move. When he looked up, he was shocked by what he saw. There, Shino, Tenten, Lee, and Temari were all lying on the ground. Hinata, however, was standing next to them and trying to help with their wounds. It looked like they were just put to sleep. Hinata looked like she had a few bumps and scrapes here and there. He rushed over to everyone and stared at them for a moment while taking a deep breath. "What's going on?" It was Albaido. "We went to stop him, or at least hold him off for a while. He is still coming here. I don't know what to do because the other people haven't come to yet." Hinata said, her voice getting scared and worried. She looked like she was getting really scared, but he knew of at least one thing he could do to help them. He took a deep breath and realized that Sachai's chakra might be able to help. She had already said that she could help people, so why not do this? He reached out and put a gentle hand on Lee's arm, hoping to start with the less hurt one. Naruto closed his eyes and hoped and prayed that he would be able to do this, that he could help someone. When he took a deep breath, he could feel his chakra flow from his hand into Lee's body. Despite that, he couldn't feel anything else. The young man was grunting to himself because he could feel something there, and he was pulling it out. Someone's thoughts went through his chakra, which made him shiver a little. The voice asked, "Who are you?" This made Naruto think it was Lee. Naruto took a deep breath and opened his eyes. Lee was looking back up at him, even though he was so tired that his eyes were closed. Had he just brought out his mind? Naruto shook his head and went to help the others, but someone stopped him. Turning around, he saw Jiraiya looking down at him. He said it while shaking his head, "Your chakra as a human isn't strong enough to bring out everyone. You were lucky to get even one of them to come out." When he looked over at the older man, Jiraiya was holding his hands together as a chakra circle formed around him. Tendrils of chakra formed and started to make their way to the other people, not only waking them up, but also healing them. Even Lee was trying to get better. How strong was this person? Naruto got back up on wobbly legs and took a deep breath before asking, "What's going to happen now?" "He's coming, we need the scroll." Naruto nodded his head and then went into the palace with everyone else. He hoped they would be able to get the scroll, but he wondered if that would be enough to give him the power to stop Albaido before it was too late. As he looked toward the stairs, he hoped his father was okay. The man wasn't supposed to die unless it was from old age. This was done by Albaido, so it's time to get the scroll. Jiraiya said something, which made Naruto look up in surprise. It was time to go to the scroll. Oh God, he would finally be able to figure out what the scroll said. He looked around and saw that everyone was just as nervous as he was. Or were they a little bit happy to see that the scroll was finally opened? Back at the palace, or more accurately, at the temple where the scroll was kept, Naruto wondered what he had to do to get the scroll, but he hoped he wouldn't be too late to figure out its secrets before Albaido showed up. The young man took a deep breath and asked, "Do you think that I'm ready?" He couldn't help but be a little worried. Would he be ready for this at all? Was he ready for this at all? He didn't think he was ready since he had just finished training. It was impossible for him. "No, I don't think you're ready, but there's nothing we can do about it," calmly answered Jiraiya. He wasn't ready. What? Why bother if you don't think I'm ready? Naruto yelled. He sounded a little angry, as if no one thought he was ready even after all that training. Naruto took a deep breath and felt his eyes turn red for a second before going back to normal. Again, he had no way of hearing Kurama's voice. He felt like he was locked away from him, at least for now. Or he could have been sleeping. Wait, does chakra need a reason to sleep? God, all of this was a mess, because you still need your evil side. You have to focus on your human chakra, and only on your human chakra, Jiraiya said in a calm voice as he ran a hand through his thick bangs. "We don't have a lot of time, though. We are out of time and can't do anything else." Naruto let out a soft sigh. He felt like he knew he had to do this. "Everyone, let's go." Before everyone started walking toward the palace, the old master said. As they went to the palace, the young man couldn't help but look at the other people. Even though most of their injuries had healed, they all looked nervous, and their skin was slightly bruised. Even though most of their injuries had healed, the bruises were still a problem. Still, they had sad looks on their faces. "So, what do I have to do?" Naruto asked, trying to get them to stop thinking about the Albaido problem. "At least, not right now. Legend says that only the chosen warrior can unlock a secret mechanism. Even though other people who were thought to be the legendary warrior had tried, they could never open it. This will be the real test to show that you are the chosen warrior. So that's why they've never been able to find the chosen warrior before." It was a bit strange, but it made sense. So, only the real legendary warrior would be able to open the scroll case. When the young man looked around, he saw that they had made it inside the palace, or at least the inner shrine where the statue was. Even though it wasn't big or anything, there was a statue in the back of the temple. The statue was big, maybe a few inches taller than Naruto himself. It had 9 tails that swirled around behind it. The ends of the tails were curled, which almost made it look like they were blowing in the wind. From what Naruto could see, there were dancing flames behind the statue. The flames were all around the fox, but it didn't look like they were trying to hurt it. It was more like working with the fox, if that makes sense. This is the statue that the great sage of old made after seeing the legendary warrior in a dream. He knew that only one person would be the chosen warrior, and that only that person would be able to unlock the statue to get the scroll. Jiraiya gave an explanation, which made Naruto even more confused. How could the wise person see such a thing? Not to mention, this far into the future for that matter. Had he seen something that would happen that would lead to all of this? The young man gulped a little as he walked over to the statue and stared at it for a long time. He thought that the statue was looking at him and judging him. It seemed like it was trying to see if he was good enough to have the scroll. Naruto again gulped, and then took a deep breath to try to calm down. God, how did he get himself in this mess in the first place? When he was thrown into the palace, he was chosen because he had been fighting one of the masters. At the time, it seemed like a long time ago. When he looked at the statue again, he saw 9 holes in the wall where the tails curled up. He walked over to the statue to get a better look because he wasn't sure if he was right or not. The statue looked like a fox, but it was actually a fox demon with a tiny bit of human blood or so. From what he could tell, there were 9 holes in the walls, but when he looked into one of them, he saw something in the back, like a gear. He had an idea all of a sudden. Might it be? He spoke in a whisper because he wasn't sure if anyone could hear him. By closing his eyes, he knew he couldn't use his demonic chakra, but he thought he might still be able to use his demonic form. It didn't take chakra to change, but it takes a lot of concentration and willpower to change back. At least, he had always thought that was the case. When he opened his eyes, his 9 tails came out and moved back and forth. He then made all of his tails go into the holes in the wall. He looked like he almost knew what he had to do, as if this was something he was always meant to do. That this was something he was always going to do, even before he was born. Growling to himself, he put all of his strength into his tails and used the strength of his tails to make the statue's tails turn. Everyone let out a shocked gasp, which made him lose his concentration for a moment. When Naruto went back to his job, he could feel something through his tails. He could feel some kind of strange clicking through the holes, and it felt like the clicking had vibrated through his tails for a very short time. Soon, he heard a loud click, which made him stop and stare. The scroll was there, lying on the floor. He did it. He did it, said Jiraiya in a shocked whisper. Naruto drew back his tails and just stared at the scroll in shock. How was it possible for him to do that in the first place? Shaking his head, he made the tails disappear before he got to the scroll. He couldn't help but look at it in shock and confusion, as if just picking it up would burn his hand. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the parchment, or rather the container that was inside it. When he turned to look at the others, he saw that they were staring at him as if he had grown a second head. "What's wrong?" he asked in confusion. "It's just that nobody had ever been able to open that in hundreds of years," whispered Ten in shock and amazement. It just seemed crazy that he, a demon, had been able to figure out how to open the statue. Okay, so what?" asked Naruto as he tilted his head. "Just open the container and read it. When you do, you will know the secret of the universe and have amazing power," she answered with a smile. He turned to the container, no, the canister, and twisted the top off, then pulled out the scroll. He was nervous because he didn't think he was good enough to read such a thing. Yet he knew that he was the only one who could do this for the sake of the world, his home, and everyone in it, or the whole world would be destroyed. Taking a deep breath, the young man slowly started to pull the scroll apart. He wondered if the scroll would break or turn to dust, thinking that he would break it because it was so old. He gulped as he fully unrolled the scroll and stared at it in shock, letting out a yelp for drama, causing everyone to scream or run away in shock and fear. Fear that something bad was going to happen to Naruto, only to calm down when he said the next words, or maybe calm down was the wrong word. When Naruto said the next few words, they started to panic even more. "The scroll is empty." "What?" Jiraiya yelled before grabbing the scroll and starting to look. I unrolled the scroll some more, hoping to find some kind of answer. Yet, nothing came into view. He whispered, "It's blank. There's no way this should be possible." As he shook his head, the young man couldn't help but think that maybe this had all been a big joke. The sage only made up the story so he could pull some kind of prank or something. This was a living nightmare that no one could help anyone wake up from. Jiraiya dropped the scroll. It rolled to Naruto's feet, where the young demon picked it up and stared at the paper. He didn't get it. He knew there was more to this scroll than meets the eye, but he couldn't help but wonder what it was trying to tell him. Some kind of hidden meaning. But no matter what, he just couldn't figure out what it was. He couldn't help but stare at the scroll, which had a shiny surface. He could only stare at his reflection, but he couldn't figure out what had happened. Albaido is on his way, and the village will be destroyed. Jiraiya whispered quietly, making everyone look at the old man in shock. They knew that he was right. The Uchiha was on his way, and he was going to kill anyone who got in his way. You'll all get the villagers out of here. I will stay back and give you all time to get them out of here," the old master said in a whisper. "But," Naruto whispered, looking at the old master with wide eyes. There was no way that Jiraiya would agree to do this. There had to be a reason for this, but no matter what he did, he couldn't think of what it could be. "He'll still kill you, Jiraiya," Naruto yelled, his body shaking at the thought of losing someone because he couldn't lose someone. He couldn't let this happen to anyone, no matter how bad they were. "Then I will have learned and paid for my mistakes." Jiraiya spoke with a small smile on his face. Naruto just stared at him in shock, as did everyone else. They were going to have to leave their home and leave their master behind. It was going to be a lot harder for them and harder on their hearts. Naruto slowly made his way to the village. He knew it would be impossible for him to save the village. He didn't know what it was that he was missing. He was able to get the scroll, but there was something more to it than he thought. Why was there nothing on the scroll? What made it a reflective surface? He let out a soft sigh as he looked around at the others walking with him. Everyone had a sad look on their faces and a sad feeling about them. None of them had wanted to leave Jiraiya behind, but what could they do? Albaido was coming. He was going to attack the village and kill everyone unless they got everyone out of there. Putting his left hand into a tight fist, he didn't think it would turn out this way, letting out a soft growl, which got everyone's attention. As he looked at them, he saw worry on their faces, mostly on Hinata's. Giving them a sad smile, he told them, "I'm fine." Okay, he lied, he wasn't okay. He was upset and angry at himself, but he wasn't going to tell them that. Turning away, he started to walk ahead. Everyone else was going to help the villagers leave, but Naruto knew that he had to focus on his father. "I hope you're okay, Dad," Naruto whispered to himself as he started to run for the shop. As he got closer to the village, his body turned back into a human. As he ran to his father's shop, the young man could barely hear people laughing at him. Look at the great furious fox, guess he couldn't do it after all. Oh God, how he wished he could kick their asses, but he didn't. Naruto looked at them for a moment, and his eyes were sad and filled with guilt. He felt like he had also let them down, even though their words were meant to hurt him. Taking a deep breath, he said calmly, "At least know that I tried to protect this village." The young man ran away as fast as he could, not caring what they thought. He had to get to his father quickly, but he knew that the others could get everyone out of the village before Albaido arrived. He just had to find out how his father was doing. After taking a deep breath, Naruto narrowed his eyes. There were just so many people walking through the village. He would have to find a way to get by without running into anyone. But that might be harder than it needs to be. When he looked up at the buildings, he thought that he could just use those like he used to when he was trying to get away from people. Naruto ran over to the building and jumped up onto the roof. He then started to jump from building to building, or at least he tried. Before he could even get to the next roof, he fell to the ground and let out a scream. What the? Even so, he was lucky that he had landed on some bags of trash. He groaned and rubbed his head as he wondered what had happened. He usually had no problems unless turning to look at the bracer on his arm. He sighed as he remembered, "I can't use demon skills, you're right. Transformation is one thing, but abilities are not." Pushing himself up onto his feet, he rubbed his back and let out a soft groan. Well, it looks like he's going to have to walk until his healing kicks in. Before he went to the shop, he looked in his pockets and then picked up the scroll. What could possibly go wrong next? He stopped for a moment and thought about what would happen if he hadn't gotten everyone out of there on time. If he could not get his father to leave the village. The mental image of Albaido coming and killing everyone to get to him and the scroll. He made a growl come out of his chest, which scared people away. That had made Naruto calm down. No, he couldn't let his anger get the best of him. He wasn't going to be a monster like Albaido. Albaido wanted to be in charge, but Naruto just wanted to keep the people around him safe. Even if they thought he was a monster, he would never let himself be consumed by the darkness. All he had to do was think about the people who made him happy. He smiled softly as he thought of his father, Iruka, and the woman he loved, Hinata. With a soft sigh of contentment, the young man went back on his way home. He only wished and hoped that his father was still there. But so far, he hadn't caught a whiff of his father leaving the village, which had to be at least a good sign. When the young man turned sharply at the corner, he could see the store. It looked like it was closed or, at the very least, that it hadn't been opened today. Or maybe he had a lot more time than usual to close up today. The young man shrugged and ran to the store, ignoring the pain in his back. "Dad, who's there?" yelled the man with blonde and red hair. He hoped and prayed that he wasn't too late. When he heard a voice he knew, it made him feel better. "Naruto, what's going on?" Iruka's voice came from outside the shop as he looked at his son. Naruto was breathing heavily as he looked at his father. Even though he was glad to see that his father was still there, he felt like he had let him down in some way. As Naruto was about to answer, he looked away and let out a soft sigh. Then he felt Iruka hug him. "What happened, boy?" With his eyes widening, Naruto held on to his father as he said, "I let down everyone, Dad. I wasn't able to finish my training. I could not do it. I just couldn't figure out how to do what Jiraiya wanted me to do. I could not master the Rasengan. I couldn't concentrate on only using my human chakra. I'm a failure." Iruka rubbed his son's back, and Naruto didn't care that a grown man crying in his arms seemed silly. He didn't care about anything right then because he felt like he'd failed so many people he'd wanted to protect. "What makes you think you failed everyone, Naruto?" asked Iruka. So Naruto pulled back, but his father held up his hand. "First, let's walk, all right. We should walk and talk so that we can get out of the village." Even though hearing some of those words just made him feel worse, Naruto knew that his father was right. When he looked over, he saw a traveling cart that had to have all of their things on it. Naruto walked over to it and put the scroll in a compartment. Then, as he and his father left their home, he started to pull it along. He wasn't even sure if they were going to talk now, since so many people were close by and could hear them. But he was wrong when his father started to speak. "So, what makes you think that you are a failure?" asked Iruka. Naruto let out a soft sigh and tried to get his thoughts together. He tried to think of how he could say this to his father, but he still wasn't sure how he could say it. As he started to talk, he made a small frown. "I could not finish the training. I was being trained to only rely on my human chakra. I have unlocked it, but I keep relying on my demonic powers, but I can't use them with this arm bracer on." As he ran his hand down and over his face, the young man tried to figure out how he could keep going. All of this was overwhelming for him, but he knew that he had a lot going on in his mind and heart. "Because of me, everyone has to leave their home, and Jiraiya is going to die." Iruka let out a soft sigh as he said, "It's not your fault, Naruto. How are we to know that you were going to be chosen as a warrior when you had never been taught how to fight in the first place?" Okay, his father has a point, but he knew there was still no reason why he couldn't finish his training and couldn't stop depending on his power no matter how hard he tried. With a soft sigh, the young man turned to his father and asked, "Dad, do you ever feel like no matter what you do or how hard you try, you can't change anything?" He made a small frown, then turned away and looked up at the sky as he thought about something. "Sometimes I wonder if there's something I don't know. I wonder who my mother was, what happened to her, and why you never talk about her." Iruka stopped dead in his tracks for a moment. Naruto stopped, too, because something had been bothering him for years. As he got older, he couldn't help but wonder if he was even Iruka's son in the first place, since they didn't look anything alike. But he just hoped to never talk about it, because he didn't want to hurt his father. "Naruto, let me tell you a story from my past. That was before you came into my life." Naruto turned to his dad with a frown on his face. "Before I opened my shop, I tried making noodles by following recipes, hoping to make a living on my own. But no matter what I did, the taste wasn't great." He laughed a little, making Naruto frown a bit more as he wondered what this story had to do with anything. "After so many tries, I gave up trying to do what I was told and instead tried my own recipe. Through trial and error, I was able to focus on what was needed instead of what was wanted." Naruto tilted his head to the side in confusion as he tried to figure out what else was going on in the story. "People now like the soup because they know it's unique and that I make it special for each person. I didn't change what was expected of me. I was just myself and used my own creativity to make what we have today." Then, with his eyes glazed over, he said, "In fact, that's how I first met your mother." When he said that, Naruto's ears perked up, and he stared at him in shock. "She came here because she smelled the soup. At first, I was hesitant because she was a demon, but her face." When Iruka thought about her, he made a small frown. Why didn't he feel love from his father? Was there something else to this? She was in trouble, and even though I was taught to hate demons, the look on her face made me want to help her. So alone and scared, I did what I could and what I thought was right, and I helped her. What happened then, Dad? And why are we telling this story?" Naruto, with a frown on his face, asked. Iruka laughed and turned to look at his son as he spoke to him. "Naruto's story teaches us to be ourselves. I didn't change who I was, and I was taught to hate demons, but my heart couldn't keep her away. If I did, I would always feel bad about it. The soup I made myself made me realize that I needed to be myself and take on so many responsibilities instead of trying to be someone I wasn't." He has no feelings. Naruto gave a small frown when he heard those words. Naruto thought about everything that had happened since he heard his father's story. If the story was supposed to teach us something, what was it? He made a small frown and thought about his whole life, back to his childhood, and hoped and prayed about what he could or should do now. He was hated as a child because people thought he was a demon, and that's all he thought he was. Still, he knew there had to be something missing for that to have happened. After that, he tried to be as human as possible, trying to live a human life and not hurt anyone. That was something that had always scared him, even to the point where he was afraid of himself. He knew he had been lying to himself when he closed his eyes, but he didn't care at the time. All he wanted was to be accepted by other people, even if that meant becoming a human. Yet, even that didn't work. He opened his eyes just a little and stared at his hands, which looked like they belonged to a human. Was he really meant to be human? A demon? What did he have to do? Soon, he felt a hand on his shoulder, which made him look at his father in surprise. Iruka said, "Do you know what I'm talking about, son?" With a big smile on his face. To be honest, he didn't think he had. He tried to be human, but when other people saw him, they only saw a demon. Jiraiya tried to get him to focus on his human chakra instead of his demonic chakra so he wouldn't lose himself in it. Wait, he was losing himself. Was that because his own mind was trying to tell him something? He knew that people hated him, and that's why he kept losing himself. But was there so much more to it than that? Maybe it was an important part of him trying to get his attention. He didn't know, but he knew he had to think things through carefully. Kurama was his demonic chakra. He was definitely a part of him, but it was a stronger part of himself that he had never thought he would need. But he knew that the man was more than just a powerful demon who had once lived and was trying to keep a promise to his wife from many years ago. Sachai, she was his human chakra. If he did have a little bit of human blood, even if it wasn't much, how powerful and useful was she to begin with? Don't get him wrong, she was very nice and had loved a very strong demon. Still, they both tried to tell him something, but they wanted him to figure it out on his own, knowing that if they told him, it would hurt him or, even worse, give him a terrible pain in his heart if it was something he hadn't heard himself. Naruto took a deep breath and closed his eyes as he tried to figure out what they were telling him. Humans and demons were so different, but at the same time they weren't. Just like there are good people, there have been good demons. Then, his dad told him a story about being yourself. If Naruto put himself in his dad's shoes, that would mean. When his eyes suddenly opened wide, he finally got it. "I have to be me," Naruto whispered. But when he looked at his father, he saw that he was just grinning at him. Iruka just smiled a little and looked at his son with soft eyes, hoping that his son had finally understood what the older man had been trying to tell him the whole time. Iruka asked his son while putting a hand on his back, "Naruto, did you understand what I meant? What do you mean by to be myself?" The man with blonde and red hair just stood there and stared at his father for a moment before moving away from the cart. He took the scroll out of the compartment and looked at the reflective surface once more. He just looked at the reflection of the scroll on the surface of the water. When he looked at his bracer, he knew that he didn't need it and that it was getting in the way of what he had to do. Naruto quickly took off the bracer, growled a little, and threw it away like it was trash. "I know what to do." The scroll did have a secret. It was meant to protect this village and give it the most power, and I finally know what it is, Dad. Naruto said this with a smile on his face, and he couldn't help but smile as he looked at his father. He felt like a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders, and after years and years of pain, he knew he had done what he should have done from the start. Iruka looked calm as he looked at his son and asked, "What is the answer, Naruto?" He wanted to make sure that Naruto got the answer he had tried to give him without just blurting it out. "I am part demon and part human. I was born with the blood and powers of a demon, but I have a human heart. I'm going to stop telling myself lies. I am Naruto, a nine-tailed fox demon, and I am the Furious Fox, a warrior chosen by the great sage to protect this village from all harm." Naruto smiled as he looked up at the path that would lead him to the palace. He finally had to do what he was meant to do. Jiraiya had been through a lot in his life, losing his family, losing his friends, losing his student, and then losing his master. Now what? He might end up dying just to give everyone a head start on getting safe. When he closed his eyes for just a moment, he couldn't help but think about his life. He started to wonder what would have happened if he had helped Albaido deal with the loss of Rin in a different way. Would the young Uchiha have still chosen this path? Or would he have done something else? Being honest, it was hard to say. Even Kakashi might have been able to help his friend, so to speak, his brother. Still, he couldn't really say that he had done a lot of good things in his life. Still, there were things in his life he was sorry about, and this was one of them. Taking a deep breath, the older man opened his eyes. His former student was standing in front of him. Over the years, Albaido hadn't changed much. Even though his hair was short, it was still the same raven black color that all Uchiha had. Like Naruto, she had spikes in her hair. His skin was pale, but that was likely because he had been locked up alone for so long. But he didn't lose any of the muscle he had built up over the years he trained before he was locked up. Yet, the black eyes that once looked at him as a child with warmth and kindness were now the cold, murderous eyes of a man who wanted nothing more than to kill, and be in charge. Albaido only had a pair of black pants on and no shoes. He probably ran through some of the snowier plains to get here, so he probably didn't have time to grab anything else. Albaido, Jiraiya said in a calm voice, with his arms behind his back. If things hadn't been the way they were, it would have been a wonderful and heartbreaking reunion. Albaido said, "Hello, Master Jiraiya," with a strange grin on his face. With his red eyes, he showed Jiraiya how he had gotten away. "I'm home." After he was done, he looked at his master with a smile on his face. Jiraiya couldn't help but stare and wonder how crazy the young man's mind had become while he was locked up. How could he let himself get this way because, no matter how hard he trained, he couldn't become the furious fox? Jiraiya looked at his old student for a long time, and he almost thought he would feel something for him. Yet, deep in his heart, he felt nothing. He only felt bad, which he knew was because he had let him down. "You know this isn't your home anymore. Since you tried to destroy the village, this is no longer your home." Albaido gave a small laugh, and a little bit of how he felt came back to the surface. Then it went down again. The older man took a deep breath and was about to speak, but Albaido got there first, almost to the letter. Jiraiya cried out in pain as Albaido slammed his open palm into his chest, sending him flying into the palace. Jiraiya gasped for air and held his chest for a moment, hoping to get more air into his lungs. The older man took a deep breath and looked up at his old student. As Albaido talked, he still had a crazy smile on his face. The way he said what he said almost made him feel cold. "Master, you should have made me the angry fox. I was the only one who deserved that title." With his eyes narrowed, Jiraiya said in a calm tone, "No, it wasn't meant to be. I'm not to blame." "Okay," he more or less yelled it then said it. Even so, as soon as he said those words, Albaido changed in some way. Even though his smile was already strange, it went crazy. His smile turned into a cruel smirk. His eyes grew wider and brighter, and his desire to kill and hurt people only grew. Albaido lifted his leg and slammed it down, hoping to hit Jiraiya, but the older man rolled out of the way and jumped up. Albaido quickly turned around and ran at Jiraiya, eyes burning with anger and hatred. "It's not your fault," he yelled, punching and kicking his old master. Jiraiya did everything in his power to stop the kicks. Albaido seemed to be much stronger and faster than before he went to jail. "Who made me do this?" he yelled, and as Jiraiya listened to his student's rant, his eyes got bigger. "Who made me believe I could be anything? I was trained until I could hear my bones cracking and breaking." Albaido yelled at Jiraiya as he turned around and kicked him in the side of his ribs. The old man was thrown into a wall and fell to the floor. The man with raven hair ran forward and yelled, "Don't you like what I've done? Aren't you? Tell me you're proud of me." Jiraiya groaned as he tried to get up. God, Albaido's body hurt. He must have used all his strength to make sure he could kill the older man. Jiraiya looked up and stared at his student, who at one point in his life he could have called a son. But he no longer thought it was possible. All he saw was what was left of this man's empty shell, which was full of nothing but darkness and hate. Albaido made a funny face as he picked up Jiraiya and held him by his shirt. As Albaido held Jiraiya, he mostly just hung a little bit off the ground. "What are you looking for?" Jiraiya said softly. Albaido did nothing but stare at him. "I'm sorry I let you down. I'm sorry I turned you into such a crazy psychopath. How much I let you down when I put too much faith in your dream and it didn't work out because it wasn't your fate." The older man let out a shaky breath and whispered, "I am sorry, Albaido." Albaido's eyes were soft for a moment, but then they got narrow again. "Please don't say you're sorry to me. I just want that scroll, damn it." Albaido yelled as he threw Jiraiya away and started walking toward the statue that held the scroll. Jiraiya was about to tell him that he couldn't open the statue, but all he could do was stare in shock. The man with raven hair had made tails with his chakra. Jiraiya was shocked to see 9 tails that looked like those of a fox. Now, he was glad Naruto had the scroll, even though the chakra couldn't really go into the statue's holes, right? Jiraiya was about to stand up again when Albaido slammed his tails into the statue's mechanism, and turned them like hands on a clock to try to get to the scroll. "Albaido, don't!" Jiraiya yelled. "No point in trying to stop me. At last, the scroll will be mine." Albaido laughed like he was crazy. When the tails could no longer move the mechanism, the statue's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Albaido just blinked in surprise, which turned into anger and then rage. When the young man turned back to his old master, he walked over to him, grabbed him by the shirt, and held him just inches from his face. "Where?" Jiraiya smiled a little, but then he winced in pain. "It belongs to the real furious fox. He's probably been gone for a long time now," he added, and the older man just looked at him and laughed a little. "You won't ever see that scroll again. You will never find the warrior or find out what was on that scroll. Never, ever, never." Near the end, Albaido tried to kill his master by putting his hands around his windpipe. His eyes were red as he did this. It was clear how angry he was, but there was no way he was going to let things stay this way. Jiraiya, on the other hand, knew that this was the end of him, but at least he had done what he had to do to give everyone a chance to get away. Master, I'm going to die soon and join you. I'm sorry if I let you down, but I let the others get away. Jiraiya thought this as his eyes began to close. Let him go. Jiraiya and Albaido both turned to look at the door. Naruto was out of breath from the long walk up the stairs. His eyes got small and angry, but not so much that he had to be afraid. The man with blonde and red hair grunted and said, You let Master Jiraiya go now, you psychopath. Okay, the insult could have been better, but Jiraiya was more confused about why he was even here. Jiraiya yelled, Naruto, you should have run, when he felt Albaido's grip loosen. Who the fuck is this? Albaido glared at the person. Naruto growled as he got into a fighting stance, holding his arms up to protect his face while still being ready to attack and using his feet to stay balanced. I am the angry fox. Naruto gave a growl. Albaido just stared. His eyes were blank and emotionless for a moment. He seemed to be trying to figure out what this information meant. This made the other two wonder what else he could be thinking about, since it shouldn't have taken him this long to figure this out. Only for Albaido to slowly start to smile. This made Naruto frown a little, and he soon started laughing, which got louder. Naruto and Jiraiya were wondering if Albaido had broken in some way. Are you effing kidding? What a loser. He became known as the Angry Fox. Grandmaster Hiruzen must have gone crazy while I was in jail. As he dropped Jiraiya, Albaido laughed out loud and held his sides as his laughter got louder. Naruto had to put his hands over his ears because this man was laughing so loudly. Even so, he narrowed his blue eyes at the younger man and said, just stop talking. You didn't deserve the title. At least I didn't go kill people just because I didn't get what I wanted. Naruto only hoped that he wouldn't look like a fool. At this point, it was a long shot, but he just hoped and prayed that he would be able to handle it, that he wouldn't fail to stop Albaido. He also knew he had to mentally prepare himself, because this battle would decide the fate of the village. Okay, not just Jiraiya, but also the village. Turning his gaze to his master, he saw that Jiraiya looked worn out. Did he even fight Albaido, or was he overpowered? Shaking his head, Naruto said, you and me, fucker. We'll settle this like men, like warriors. Soon, Albaido's laughter stopped, causing him to just stare at the younger man. What reason could he have to just stare at him like that? Was there something wrong with him at this point, or was there something more now? He gave a soft sigh and was about to open his mouth to say something when Albaido spoke first. Albaido asked with a smirk, what makes you think I'd want to fight you anyway, loser? Naruto said calmly, you will, because I have something you want. He was smirking. Albaido just stared at him, confused for a moment as if he was trying to think as to what it is that Naruto would have. Naruto really didn't think Albaido would get it, even though he had heard what Jiraiya had said to the man with the raven hair. He gave a cocky smirk and narrowed his eyes. The young man held up a scroll and said, you son of a whore, I have this scroll. You'd like it. You can't take it from me until I'm dead and buried. But as soon as he said that, Naruto's eyes grew wide with surprise as Albaido ran toward him. Naruto could only say, oh shit. He tried to get away by making a quick U-turn, but he didn't think Albaido was as fast as he was. When Albaido slammed his hands into Naruto's back, it almost reminded him of how Hinata fought. Did he learn how she fought from her? Naruto yelped in surprise and started to fall down the stairs, but he pushed his hand out and used his power over wind to stop some of his falls. Once Naruto was sure he had reached the bottom of the stairs, he groaned in pain, shook himself, and looked up at the top of the stairs. Albaido stood there and looked at him with dead eyes. The young man wondered if Albaido was trying to figure out how to kill him because of how dark Albaido's eyes were. Well, if he was going to fight, he wouldn't go down without a fight. He slid the scroll into the back of his pants and hoped he wouldn't lose it during the fight. For now, though, he had to focus on finding a way to distract the older man. God, he knew this was going to be a hard one. But he also knew that this would decide what would happen to the village. Give me the scroll or your life will be over. Albaido glared at him. Naruto gave him a growl and looked at him for a moment before looking down at the village. He knew he needed to watch out. He could still convince the remaining villagers to leave while he fought Albaido. He hadn't really expected Albaido to be there yet, but he hoped that for once his guess would be right. If he could find a way, Naruto closed his eyes tightly and took a deep breath. When he opened them, the blue eyes that had been there were now a deep crimson with a black slit. That made Albaido look at him for a moment in shock. In fact, he looked shocked. Did the fact that Naruto's eyes could change surprise him? Nah, it didn't matter to him right now. There is only one thing you need, and it's not the scroll, Naruto said with his eyes narrowed. There was a lot of talking, but he didn't know how long the fight would last. He just hoped he could keep it going as long as possible. He took a deep breath and thought about whether Albaido would just try to steal it. What he didn't expect, though, was what Albaido asked. What would that be, then? Okay, he didn't expect that, but he didn't care at the moment. Oh, you want to know what you need, do you? With a smirk on his face, Naruto said. Oh, he was not going to take this insult lying down. He had been thinking about this for a few minutes, but he hoped he wouldn't regret it later. What the hell? He wouldn't. You can go fuck yourself, Naruto yelled, but then he gasped in pain as the air was suddenly knocked out of his lungs. He felt like Albaido's fist had hit him in the stomach and sent him flying. Naruto didn't know Albaido could move that fast. There had to be a reason for this. He might have done this with his chakra. What could he do to help him win against this jerk? He might just use his demon chakra. No, he needed both. He had to use both chakras to give himself at least a chance of kicking Albaido's behind. Still, he had no fucking idea how to connect his two chakras. Naruto felt the pain as he rolled down the stairs. He couldn't catch his breath because the pain was so bad. Once Naruto felt the ground under him, he felt like everything was spinning. He had no idea what was up, down, left, or right. He slowly blinked and looked around, trying to figure out what to do. He couldn't stand. He was still having trouble getting his breath, but he knew that his demonic healing could only help him so much. God, I just hope that this works out for me, Naruto groaned, and then threw up what was in his stomach. God, all that spinning had hurt him way more than he thought was possible. Soon, he felt someone pick him up by his ponytail, which made him weakly look at the once proud hero. So, Furious Fox, what do you have to say now? Asked Albaido. Naruto's eyes got narrow, but his eyes were wandering, so he couldn't really see what was in front of him. Naruto blinked slowly and whispered, you are nothing but a fucking jerk with an inferiority complex. There's nothing more or less. Albaido hit Naruto in the chest with his knee, sending the young man flying for a moment. Even though the battle hadn't started yet, he was already getting the short end of the stick. What else could possibly go wrong? Naruto let out a small groan. He would have laughed at first when he thought he would fight someone like Albaido. Now, he wasn't going to brag about how good he was, because he wasn't that self-centered. Not at all. He didn't think, though, that he would be kicked in the behind like this. The young man took a deep breath and tried to think about what he could do to get himself ready to attack. There had to be something that he could fight back against. To be able to protect yourself in some way. Naruto took a deep breath and slowly pushed himself up as he watched the ex-hero slowly walk toward him. Albaido just looked at him with his cold, empty eyes. His smile, on the other hand, was cruel and sadistic. At least, he thinks that's the word he would use to describe him. How the powerful have fallen. I think it was a mistake for Grandmaster Hiruzen to pick you. You could not possibly be the warrior. I don't know how you got the scroll, but it was wrong. Albaido said with a grin on his face. Naruto growled a little again, and it seemed like the sound of his growl made him look a little confused. Naruto had no idea why that was happening. If Albaido doesn't know he's a demon, that is. Oh yeah, Albaido was locked up before Naruto was born. He was pretty sure of it, at least. Naruto groaned and pushed himself up, slowly getting back on his feet as he glared at the man with the raven hair. I won't let you do whatever you want. Naruto let out a growl, and his eyes flashed red for a second before going back to their normal ocean blue color. The young man took a deep breath and got into a fighting position. He could feel his demonic healing working as he began to feel better. If this fight was going to last a long time, he would have to keep his demonic chakra ready to use. He couldn't take the chance of letting someone else give him the boot already. At least, don't do it again. Albaido just stood there and looked at Naruto. His eyes turned red and had 3 tomos in them. Naruto had no idea what the hell it was, but it went away before he could figure it out. Albaido seemed confused about something, but he didn't say anything about it. At least, he didn't do it right now. Albaido asked, what are you, boy? So, he was going to ask him about it. He narrowed his eyes and said, you shouldn't have been able to get better so quickly. Naruto just gave him a growl. There was no way he was going to tell him what he was. No, this wasn't the time for reveals. This was the time to act. Let's just say, I'm a special case. He said this with a smirk and then ran forward. Using his own chakra, he tried to speed himself up so that he could have an advantage over Albaido in their fight. Even though the raven-haired man was strong, he was still just a person. He moved quickly and hit Albaido in the stomach, knocking the air out of his lungs. Albaido yelped in pain, but before the former hero could attack back, Naruto turned around and kicked him in the ribs, sending him flying into a tree. Naruto was shocked and amazed to realize that he had hit him. Before he saw Albaido coming at him with a scream, he just shook his head. Naruto quickly dodged the older man's attack and slammed his foot into his back, hoping to knock him out. To be honest, whatever works for him. But Albaido seemed to be up to something else. He quickly turned his body around and grabbed Naruto's ponytail, which was the only part of Naruto the older man could get a hold of. Naruto yelled out in shock and fell to the ground with the older man. He was trying to get his thoughts together, but he wasn't sure if he could. The young man slowly turned his blue eyes around and saw Albaido standing up and grinning down at him. Damn, he got himself together faster than he thought he would. Albaido gave him a smirk. Once again, his strange eye pattern made his eyes flash red. What happened? What was that weird thing he kept doing with his eyes? He knew for sure that those weren't the eyes of a demon, but just looking at them almost made him shiver to the core. What was it about those eyes that scared him? Don't look into those eyes, Naruto. I have no idea what would happen to you. Kurama's voice screamed. Naruto didn't know how he just came back, but he thought it was because he wasn't wearing the bracer that locked away his demonic chakra. Naruto was almost going to ask why, but Kurama had already started to talk. Just trust me, Naruto, you don't want to look into those eyes. They belong to someone who can easily hurt a demon. I don't know how it would affect you since you are only partly human. I can tell from the way you look. You are afraid of my eyes. I don't know why. Albaido said this with a grin. Even though Naruto couldn't see the smirk on his face, he could almost hear it in his voice. Soon, Naruto felt Albaido pull him up by his shirt, which made the younger man stand back up again. What was he going to do, Lord? After a moment of looking at Albaido's eyes, the blonde turned away, not sure if they were normal or not. If I made you stare at me, boy, I wonder what would happen. Albaido got really close to Naruto's face and whispered. What was this guy's deal with making people feel bad? Did he start doing it because he hadn't seen anyone for so long? Or did he do it because he knew it would make people uncomfortable? I don't care how sick you are as long as you don't kiss me. Naruto growled. Might as well use humor to try to get his mind and body to stop shaking because he was almost going to look at his eyes again. Albaido narrowed his eyes, and the red in them went back to being coal black. Naruto wondered if his anger had just made his chakra block the power from getting to his eyes. Well, at least he didn't feel that fear anymore, so that was at least something. But the man with the raven hair also felt something else, but he wasn't sure what it was. I might be crazy, but I'm not gay. Albaido yelled and threw Naruto around like he was nothing but a rag doll. He fell to the ground a few times before landing on his stomach and just lying there. Okay, so don't make any more gay jokes with him, because that just made him madder. The young man took a deep breath and let out a soft groan. He was trying to get up, but he knew he still had to be careful. When his eyes changed, he couldn't look at him because the fear kept coming back, which scared him. He couldn't afford for him to think that something bad would happen, like him losing control of himself again. But before he could get to his feet, Naruto screamed as he felt a huge weight slam into his back. The pain made him do more than just scream. It made him roar. When Albaido heard Naruto's loud roar of pain and suffering, he laughed. He just laughed. Naruto just lay there on the ground, eyes wide with pain, trying to catch his breath. What the hell was this guy doing? You're not a person, so it makes sense that you're scared of what my eyes can do. You know, no, you personally don't know, but your blood does. Your blood knows that what my clan and our eyes can do is true. How we can hurt you more than you think we can. That's why you keep trying to look away when I point my Sharingan at you. Albaido said this with a laugh that was full of madness. Yes, there was no doubt that this guy was crazy. He did know. Hell with it all. Naruto slowly turned his head and stared at Albaido. For once, he was scared because someone crazy like him had found out what he was. At the very least, what he wasn't. What did he need from him at this point? If I can use you, I can run the whole town. Maybe even use you to go farther than ever before. In his chest, his heart was beating quickly. He couldn't let that happen, though. Too many people would die. I won't let that happen, Naruto yelled, only to scream when Albaido slammed his foot into his spin again. If this jerk didn't stop doing that, he was going to get a royal beating. He had to do something first before he could do anything else. He quickly looked around to see what he could do, but there was nothing in his reach that he could use. He wasn't going to use his tails, because Albaido might grab them. He was on dirt, okay? This was more than just fighting dirty, but that's all he got. He quickly grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it at the older man's face, which made him yelp and jump back while rubbing his face. Naruto stood up quickly, or as quickly as he could while still hurting, and looked at the evil ex-hero. I'm not going to let you do what you want. I'll stop you before you hurt anyone here. Albaido just smiled, even when he was in pain. Oh yeah? Would you really help someone who doesn't like you? I know for sure that you're not human, but because of what happened all those years ago, everyone here hates demons. By default, they should also hate you. Naruto just glared, and for a split second his eyes turned red before going back to normal. It looks like I touched a nerve, doesn't it? He laughed a little and wiped his eyes one more time before taking his hands away from his eyes, which were a little bloody. They only see you as a monster. You will never be liked by anyone, and you will only be seen as a way to hurt people. Shut up, Naruto yelled. Don't listen to him, Naruto. He's only trying to get you wild up, shouted Kurama. He knew that, but still it hurt him a lot more to hear it from a psychopath. He didn't know how, but it just hit him where it hurt. Before he could say anything else, Albaido hit him again and yelled, "Get out of here. Show me who you really are. I want to see what the monster looks like." When Naruto's back hit a tree, he groaned. God, that hurt. What was that guy trying to do? Don't make Naruto change. He'll be more likely to be able to control you. Stay in the form of a person. The fox spirit yelled. So, he was trying to control him, right? Wait, how did Kurama know this to begin with? When he looked up, he saw that Albaido was coming at him again, shouting, no, screaming, no, even more than that, demanding that Naruto change into his real self. He had no way of letting that happen. If he was going to fight him, he had to be himself. If being a human, no, a demon, with a human heart meant anything, he would have to stick to this, wouldn't he? Naruto shook his head and went to throw a punch, but the older man quickly dodged it and hit the blonde with a kick to the side, making him fall over from the pain. What was wrong with him that he kept putting him down? Albaido slammed his fist into Naruto's face and yelled, "Transform, you son of a whore." He hoped that the pain would force Naruto to change into something else. Naruto groaned a little. He had been hit in the head so many times that most of the time he couldn't see very well. Even though he still didn't want to change, there was no way he would let himself change. He didn't know if he could still be controlled with his human blood still in him. But he was starting to doubt it because every time he thought about Albaido's Sharingan, his body would shiver. "I won't change," Naruto whispered, but Albaido hit him again on the side of the head, right at the temple, and Naruto just fell down and laid there. Naruto felt like he was going in and out of his mind. It almost seemed like the illusion he was using to keep himself looking human was falling apart, but it wasn't. Wait, did that even make sense? Slowly blinking, the young man looked up, and when he couldn't help but look at the older man blankly, he started to kick Naruto in the stomach. I was hoping that the younger man would say something, but he didn't. All Naruto could do was yelp or whine because he was in pain. His body shimmered, and he was so close to changing back to his original form. He tried to stop it, to hide his demonic appearance for now, but damn it all. Even doing that was getting harder and harder for him. Naruto shut his eyes tight and tried to use his willpower to stop himself from changing. He didn't want to change, and he didn't want to be used as a weapon in any way. It scared him a lot just to think about it, even though he tried to keep it a secret. Just as his body was giving up the fight in preventing his transformation, a voice yelled out. It sounded familiar but strange. "Get away from him, you son of a whore." Naruto turned toward the new voice, and he couldn't help but slowly open his eyes wider. Hinata was in a fighting stance, and her face, which was usually kind, cool, and collected, was now angry, tense, and ready to fight. Still, she kept her calm, which showed that her anger didn't make her lose herself. Albaido just looked at her and smiled in amusement. "Oh, little lady, do you think you can take me on?" Albaido mocked. Hinata just narrowed her lavender-colored eyes at him. She didn't seem to like being teased very much. Naruto tried to talk to her and tell her she should run for her life, but he just couldn't. Only soft whines came out of his mouth, probably from his evil self. "You can't hurt Naruto any more than you already have. I won't leave him alone to fight." Hinata yelled at him and then ran at him, her eyes getting smaller as her anger grew. But, thank God, it didn't seem to have made her blind. Still, Albaido was faster than her. They punched and kicked each other, and they seemed to be able to easily avoid each other's attacks. Yet, Albaido, it almost looked like he was just trying to amuse her instead of giving it his all. Naruto groaned and tried to push himself up because he had to do something. Had to do something to get Hinata out of there. Yet, no matter what he did, he just couldn't figure out what it was that he had to do. Yes, he knew that he had to accept himself, both parts of himself, but how was he to do that? What was the one thing that he was preventing from happening in the first place? Coughing a bit, his lungs hurting from the amount of times that Albaido had kicked him, knocking the wind out of him. "Hi, da, ta," whispered Naruto. He had to get back out there. The thought of losing her, it hurt his heart. He had to get out there, had to stop the fighting. He had to fight Albaido himself and stop this once and for all so no one else ever got hurt again. Suddenly, there was a loud scream, causing Naruto to turn to the source. There laid Hinata, her arm in an odd position, but it wasn't just that. It seemed that she had it dislocated as well as broken. All Naruto could do was stare at her with wide eyes. Didn't think you could beat me. Women shouldn't be warriors. I knew one like you once, someone I cared deeply for, but she died because she wasn't strong enough. I lost her because she wanted to be something else, be something different. Well, you and all women need to learn your place here. You can't be more than what you are meant to be, shouted Albaido as he kicked Hinata in her shoulder, causing her even more pain. No, Naruto growled. He had to stop this, had to stop it before it went further. Yet, his body, it wouldn't move. Albaido caused more harm to her, kicking her, punching her. Yet, what he saw next was what sent his blood cold. Albaido created claws from his own chakra, slashing at Hinata and picking her up, stabbing her in the stomach, causing her to scream all the more. Naruto couldn't stand this anymore. Tightly shutting his eyes, he hoped and prayed to whoever the hell was listening to him that would help him. His heart ached for Hinata, seeing her go through such pain. His demonic blood burned and yearned to hurt the one who dare cause the one he loved pain. Both parts of him wanted one thing, and one thing only, to protect Hinata. A whirlwind of flames surrounded Naruto, causing both Albaido and Hinata to stare at the scene in shock. It seemed that neither of them expected this to happen, yet Hinata felt like something horrible had happened to the fox demon. Naruto, she whispered. Naruto could feel everything happen to him. He felt like a dam had broken, allowing the flow of his human and demon chakra to burst forth, merging and swirling together into one. His fox ears appeared, as did his tails, claws, and fangs. Yet, his feet did not remain the same, and had become the legs of a fox instead. His hair completely turned blonde as his chakra grew in power and strength. Yet, his eyes, only one of them changed for the most part. Both pupils turned into slits, but left eye turned crimson, while the other remained blue. The whisker marks became thicker, as did his hair. As soon as the whirlwind left, Naruto stood there in his new form, just glaring down at Albaido. Okay, you son of a bitch, you wanted me to transform? Well, here I am, ready to take you the fuck down. As Naruto stood there, he could feel the amount of power that was flowing through him. The power, the energies of both his human and demon chakras just seemed to be flowing together as one. Taking a look at his new form, he wondered how this worked. Sure, he knew that he had pretty much everything that his demon form would have, but this one, it was still slightly different. More so with the fox legs, he was just standing on the pads of the fox paws, as if he was standing on his hind legs. Was that what it was? Maybe. Though, now wasn't the time to be fascinated with his new form. Right now, he had to kick some serious ass and beat the living daylight out of Albaido. Turning his gaze back to Albaido and Hinata, the young man knew that he had to get Hinata out of there. Growling softly, he ran quickly toward them and jumped in the air, kicking Albaido's head, and quickly grabbed Hinata. Holding her in his arms, he rushed off as quickly as his legs would carry him. Once he was sure that he was far enough, he looked at Hinata as he set her down. Just stay here, okay? I don't want you getting hurt again, Naruto calmly said, hoping that he didn't get them caught. Naruto, what happened to you? Asked Hinata with a frown. To be honest, I'm not really sure. I think this form was created from my human and demon chakras merging. I don't know if it's permanent or not, but I'll use this power to stop Albaido. Naruto answered her softly, closing his blue and crimson eyes before looking at her again. For now, just stay here and relax, okay? Or maybe even see if you can check on Jiraiya. He was badly beaten too. Hinata looked like she wanted to argue with him, yet the expression on his face told her not to. She let out a soft sigh as she nodded her head. Alright. Naruto smiled a little before turning his gaze, fox ears flickering in the direction of where they had left Albaido. It seemed that he was already looking for the two of them. Narrowing his eyes, he pushed himself back up to his feet, paws, whatever, and ran off to stop Albaido from finding Hinata. Naruto knew that even with this new form of his, he still had no idea what it could do to him. The power almost seemed overwhelming, yet he kept his sense of self about him. Now that he thought about it, he didn't feel threatened anymore. He knew that Albaido was still a threat, yet he didn't feel like he was going to lose control over himself or black out. What changed? Shaking his head, the young man growled when he smelled Albaido coming towards him. It seemed that the raven-haired man sensed his chakra and was heading towards him. To be honest, Naruto hoped that Hinata was able to hide her own chakra. He couldn't take it if he lost Hinata in any way. Closing his eyes for a brief moment, hoping to calm himself down, he knew that if he got himself worked up, he could expel his chakra, which could cause a less than savory issue. Albaido burst through from the trees and bushes as he glared at the demon warrior. Naruto just gave the ex-warrior a calm stare, as if he showed no importance to him in the least. It seemed that Albaido was losing control over his temper, for his anger was starting to flare, to the point where it almost burned at Naruto. What's the matter? Mad that I gotta move in? He chuckled a little before crossing his arms over his chest. Albaido glared as he said, "How is it that you changed like that? A demon normally just shift just like that." He snapped his fingers before he let out a slight human growl. "Though, I won't lie, you have a lot of power. Maybe I could use you just like how I used those demons all those years ago." Naruto's ears flickered at those words. What was he talking about? "Oh, you don't know, do you?" Naruto just glared. He felt like he did, but he just couldn't remember. "Years ago, I tried to rule over this village with demons. I can easily control demons without any kind of issue, but I was stopped. Demons were freed and ran off thinking they'd be possessed again," Albaido said with a glare, only to smirk. "But maybe with your help I may be able to do it again." He chuckled a little, getting ready to make his way towards Naruto, his eyes ablaze with the Sharingan. As soon as the Sharingan was activated, he felt a slight chill going up his spine. But it wasn't as bad as before. It did have him confused about it, but knew that he still had to be cautious about the man's eyes. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto calmly said, "I won't allow you to control me. I will protect this village no matter what, even if everyone in the village hates you," smirked Albaido. "Even then, because I rather them be safe than to have them dead. If they hate me still because of what I am, and what I'm not, then so be it. I still have people who care about me," Naruto answered with a calm expression within his eyes. His ears flickered in Albaido's direction before he said, You will be going down today. I won't allow you to hurt anyone else again." Albaido glared at the demon before he rushed at him and screamed out in rage. Naruto jumped out of the way and spun around, kicking Albaido in the back. There was no way that he would allow Albaido to get close enough to control him. Well, that was assuming that he could even be controlled. He had no idea, even with him having human blood, if it would still work. Albaido quickly turned around and threw his fist at Naruto's jaw, sending the fox demon sprawling on the ground for a moment before he twisted his body around and landed on his feet. Narrowing his eyes, the young demon flexed his claws, using his control over wind chakra to sharpen his claws as he rushed forward, swiping his claws at the ex-hero. Albaido just glared as he dodged all of the attacks, his eyes trying to focus on the demon before him. Naruto wondered if he would be able to make this quick and painless. He knew that he had to be quick regardless. He didn't know if Hinata had made it to Jiraiya, but he knew that he had to be careful. Throwing a fist, Naruto sent Albaido flying into one of the nearby buildings. The force of his body slamming into the building had caused an indent of Albaido's body. Okay, to be honest, Naruto hadn't expected that in the first place, but he wasn't going to complain. Taking a deep breath, the young man rushed forward, though Albaido was able to dodge the strike, causing Naruto to slam his fist into the brick building. Breathing deeply, the young man turned his head to stare at Albaido and smirked at him for a moment. He was up to something, though he wasn't sure. Pulling his fist out of the building, he had to think of something else. Growling at him, the young man rushed toward Albaido. Though, Albaido ran off and ran up the tallest building in the village. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto created flames in his palms as he said, "That won't stop me." He then tossed them toward the older man, knocking him over before rushing to the other side of the building. Yet, what surprised him was enough to make him say, "Oh shit," for Albaido threw what looked like a firebomb, causing it to explode, sending Naruto flying through the air and laid on the ground. Groaning, the young man tried to push himself up only to wince from the pain. Groaning, the young man tried to push himself on once again and shakily got himself up to his feet. His chakras healing him a bit quicker than it would before. Must be because of his human chakra mixing as well. Looking up, he saw Albaido walking slowly to him, causing Naruto to growl a little. Breathing deeply, the young man got himself into a self-defense position. He had to think of what Albaido was going to do next. With how the man's mind was, how unstable it was, there was no telling what would happen next. Though, Albaido just smirked as he held up fireballs in his hands. "Let's play ball, shall we?" Albaido said before throwing ball after ball of flames at Naruto. Naruto, without thinking, started to run on all fours, his back legs helping to build up his speed as he ran, going left and right, sliding a bit as he tried to turn direction. Maybe this was why he had the legs. It was to help with his speed with dodging in a way. Looking up for a moment, he saw that Albaido just kept creating new fireballs and kept trying to get Naruto closer. Well, if that was what he wanted, then he would get just that. Though he had to think of something in order for him to try to get close enough to get a strike in. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto looked at one of the buildings. Maybe he could use that. Breathing deeply, he rushed for the building and started to run up it, using his claws on both his paws and hands as he ran circles around the building as he slowly made his way to the top. Maybe from up there he could attack Albaido, or maybe even get the drop on him. That would be rather amazing for sure, though he knew that he still had to think things through instead of just attacking without plans. Breathing deeply, he managed to make it to the top of the building, No longer feeling the heat of flames near him, the young man took a look around, wondering where Albaido was. What the hell? Tilting his head to the side in confusion. He had no idea, but knew that he had to be somewhere. Sniffing the air, he couldn't locate the crazy man's scent. It almost seemed as if he had just up and disappeared for some reason. Tilting his head to the side, he whispered, "Where the fuck is he?" He sighed softly before the young man started to turn around to get a different view, until he yelped in shock. For standing there was Albaido with a big twisted insane grin on his face. "How did you do?" he said before punching the demon in the stomach, causing him to scream as he fell off the building and crash landed on the ground. Groaning, Naruto just laid there for a few minutes, maybe seconds. He had no idea. He knew that he had to get up before Albaido attacked him once again. Opening his eyes, he stared with wide eyes as Albaido had already jumped off the building, following Naruto right after he had pushed the fox demon off the building. Before Naruto could even get off the ground, Albaido had him pinned, using flames to create kunai and stab him in the shoulders. Naruto screamed in pain as he felt the fire burning through his flesh and gritted his fangs together, hoping to get all of this pain to stop. Looking up in shock, Naruto stared at Albaido as he saw that Albaido's eyes were spinning. Eyes widening in shock, he heard Albaido saying, "Soon you shall be under my power." He chuckled a little. Naruto felt his fear rising, and it was rising quickly. "Dear God, I'm going to lose my mind," thought Naruto. He couldn't move. He didn't think he could move anymore. In fact, he felt panic starting to settle in. His thoughts kept going to Hinata, his father, and everyone else in the village, thinking that they were going to get killed by his claws. "Naruto, relax. You won't be controlled. If you were, you would have lost your thoughts the moment he even got this close and stared at your eyes," shouted Kurama, hoping to calm down Naruto. Naruto just laid there in both shock and pain. He would have. But what did that mean? "Your human blood, it must protect you from being controlled by the Sharingan. I didn't think it was possible, but you're immune. Not to the fear, sadly, but immune to the control itself," said Kurama in awe. Well, that brought a bit of relief to Naruto, which gave him a whole new way of kicking Albaido's ass. Oh, this was going to be sweet for sure, though it still wouldn't stop the man from trying to control the demon part of Naruto. Focusing his chakra to surround him, Naruto created a whirlwind of blades to attack the madman that had him pinned down to the ground. The attack itself had caused Albaido to scream from the pain as he jumped off of the demon and stared in shock. What the fuck? The flaming kunai disappeared from his shoulder, allowing the younger man to sit up and rise to his feet at long last. "How can I not control you? You're a demon. Demons are meant to be controlled," shouted Albaido with anger and rage. The way he sounded, the way he looked, it all just made Naruto smile. Chuckling to himself, the younger man looked up as he said, "Maybe it only works on full demons. I am not a full-blooded demon." He chuckled a little more before narrowing his eyes. "I am a demon, but I have human blood in me." After that, he ran forward to attack, and it was clear that things were about to get bad. As Naruto charged forward, his 9 tails moved back and forth behind him. Albaido had no idea what the hell was going on. Of course, he only knew that something bad was about to happen to him. Naruto hit Albaido in the jaw with a punch, then turned around and kicked him in the side. Albaido flew away and landed on the ground, where he rolled around for a bit before rolling back up on his feet and looking up to defend himself. But even he couldn't do anything as Naruto thrust his tails forward and wrapped them around the crazy man before slamming him into a wall, and then the ground. Albaido yelled out in pain. Albaido could not live. There was no way he could. Even though he knew it was wrong to kill, he did it anyway. It wouldn't be right to kill anyone, but letting Albaido live would give him another chance to hurt or even kill someone. The risk wouldn't be worth it. He couldn't put everyone's lives in danger just because he felt sad for a moment. Naruto slammed his foot into the crazy man's stomach as he growled and dropped Albaido, hoping to slow him down. Even before he turned into a fox, Albaido was fast, but Naruto's new fox legs and new skills gave him the speed he needed to beat him. Albaido blew flames in Naruto's face, which made him temporarily lose his sight. Because of his power over fire, the fox demon had small burns on his skin, but he was mostly resistant to fire. As Albaido stumbled to his feet and started to growl, the younger man got a good look at him. Albaido yelled, "You are nothing but a stupid fox." Naruto growled and put out his arm while saying, "I'm not a stupid fox, I'm the stupid fox." Then he put out his other hand and swiped it over his open palm. A sphere of blue chakra started to form on his hand. Albaido couldn't believe what he was seeing because no one had been able to do that move in hundreds of years. "There's no way you could have figured it out." "Well, I have." As he moved forward, Naruto let out a growl. Albaido was frozen in shock and couldn't move as he looked at the one attack that even he hadn't been able to master. When he saw someone else do the move well, He almost wondered if this was how things were meant to be for him. He closed his eyes and gave a small, sad smile. Albaido knew things were over as soon as he heard the shout. Rasengan. A gust of wind, smoke, and dust blew through the area, surrounding it and covering it in a cloud of dust as it flew through the forest. Naruto knew one thing. Before the attack hit, it seemed like Albaido's anger and hatred just went away. It almost looked like he gave up when he saw the move that even Jiraiya had trouble learning. He had no idea why that was happening, and it made him very confused. When Naruto looked down at Albaido's broken body, he couldn't help but feel a little sorry for the man. He only turned out this way because he lost someone he loved. He almost wondered if that's what would have happened to him if he'd lost Hinata. Taking a deep breath, he turned around and was shocked to see everyone walking through the cloud. Had they listened? Or have they always lived near each other? He had no idea, and he just stared at them with wide eyes. They made him think they were going to attack him in some way. Was all he could say before everyone started to cheer and run to him. Naruto screamed in shock because he didn't know what was going on. But everyone helped him up and cheered because they had all been saved. Even Iruka was there, which made him blush at what he said. That warrior is my son, and I've never been more proud of him. Even though he was used to hearing praise from his father, it still made him blush a little. The young man couldn't help but laugh to himself and smile before he could feel everyone putting him down. He thought that his tales might bother them a little. The fact that he was a demon might still bother them, but it was a start. He said in a calm voice to the villagers, "I'm just glad that everyone is safe." Even though he had to kill someone to save them, he still felt bad about it. He took a deep breath and then said in a calm voice, "Let's just fix up the village and enjoy our lives, huh?" He laughed a little and started walking ahead. He had to make sure Hinata and the others were okay. Looking up, he saw Hinata limping over to him with a small smile on her face. She looked a lot better, that's for sure. "Hinata," he smiled and said it in a whisper. "Naruto, you did it, I had no doubt." She smiled and said it. "Jiraiya, what about her? Did you ever see him?" asked Naruto. "He's doing fine. The people who could help him did," Hinata replied. He let out a soft sigh and was glad that Jiraiya didn't die. He thought that everything was the way it should be. When he looked back at Albaido's still body, he could see that his fate was over. But was there more to it than meets the eye? He didn't know, but he had a feeling that his life was far from what he thought it was. Hinata asked Naruto, with a scowl on her face, seeing him sway from side to side as he got closer and closer to falling over. Naruto. At the edges of his vision, there was darkness. His body felt numb, and his head felt like it was going to spin. He passed out before he knew what had happened. Naruto let out a soft moan because his body hurt. In fact, for some reason, he felt awfully tired. He slowly blinked his blue eyes and looked around. He was back in his room at his dad's house. Should have been closer so that they wouldn't have had to carry him up and down those stairs. The young man rubbed his face and took another look around. He was alone. His father probably thought he would sleep a little longer. Naruto slowly pushed himself up, crawled out of bed, and stood on his feet. He let out a soft laugh. It felt different. When he looked down at himself, he saw that his legs were back to normal. He reached up and touched his ears, but there were no fox ears there. He must have turned back into a human while he slept. The young man started to go downstairs while shaking his head. He didn't know what was going on. Or, even worse, was it all just a dream? No, because his body hurt too much for it to have all been a dream. As the young man carefully went down the stairs, he felt his legs give out, which made him yelp and fall. The young man groaned and pushed himself up a little bit, trying to figure out why his body still felt so weak. Naruto, his father and a few other people yelled. When he looked up, he saw his father, Hinata, Shikamaru, Tenten, Temari, and Lee were right behind him. Even though he didn't see any of the other masters, he wondered where they might be. Iruka was the first person to get to him. He helped the younger man get to his feet and then took him to a chair in the kitchen. "You okay? After the battle, you just passed out?" Iruka asked out of worry. "Yeah, I'm just tired and sore. I'm not sure what happened or how I changed back. I almost thought that change would last forever, but I won't complain because I'm glad it didn't." With a soft sigh, Naruto said. When he looked up at everyone, he wondered why they still looked so worried and worried. Did he have a problem that they didn't know about, or were they just worried? He asked with a frown, "Is something wrong?" Hinata was the one who spoke up first. "We didn't think you'd wake up. You just fell, and no one or anything we did could get you to move. I thought you were really going to die." Hinata looked like she was about to cry, which made the young demon want to hold her in his arms. Unfortunately, he wasn't strong enough to stand for long. Shikamaru finally said, "I thought," and then he began to explain something. "I think I know what to think about your new form, Naruto turned toward him and frowned. From what I've learned, most demons can stay in either a human or a demon form, depending on how they can do it. Fox demons are really good at this, but when a half-demon was alive, they could change into their other form whenever they wanted or lose all of their demonic chakra once a month. Even though you seem more like a demon than a person, that still threw Naruto off a lot. How could he be more demonic than human when his father was all human? From what I can tell, your current form is what you get when you only use human chakra, when you are in the form you are most used to, or when you want to, use your demon chakra to change into that form. But the shape with Albaido Shikamaru took a pause. It almost looked like he was trying to make it more dramatic. He had no idea why that was happening, and it was killing him. When you use both, this is the form you get. Almost a perfect blend of your family's traits, but with a few more demonic traits. But because it is strong, it is also dangerous. Okay, Naruto frowned a little bit at that. How could it even be dangerous to begin with? With a frown, Naruto asked, "What do you mean?" "You are using up your main sources of energy faster because you are using both parts of your chakra. You are never in danger of dying when you only use half of yourself," Shikamaru explained, then closed his eyes and put his arms across his chest. "Still, doing both makes you more tired and puts stress on your body and mind. So that's why you're hurting and tired. Even though you didn't really use it, you used up a lot of chakra. Even more so when the Rasengan was used. It used up the last bit of chakra you could spare without dying. After the battle was over, it had taken a toll on you. Since then, you've been sleeping for about 3 days. So that's why he lost consciousness. No wonder it had taken so much weight. How could I have slept for 3 days? How did that even happen? How could he have slept for so long to begin with? He doesn't understand why. You did. Both your human chakra and your demonic chakra had to heal. We had been worried about you before because we couldn't find any sign of your chakra." Temari said this with a frown. So, he hadn't talked to Kurama or Sachai because of that. He couldn't even talk to them because they were too tired. The young man rubbed his face and tried to think of what he should say or do. He knew there had to be something he could do, but he didn't know what. The young man tried to calm down by taking deep breaths. Tried to calm down, knowing that getting himself worked up at this point would do more harm than good. "So, what happened while I was sleeping?" he asked after taking a deep breath. "Everyone in the village has been worried about you and wanted to make sure you were alright." Albaido was laid to rest beside Rin. Master Kakashi knew that's how he would have liked it so far. "Most of the repairs have been made to the village," Shino said in a boring tone. Well, that's at least something. Even though it worried him that the villagers now saw him differently because he stopped a crazy man from hurting them. Naruto took a deep breath and looked out the window while he thought about what would happen next in his life. Even though he was still the furious fox, he was still just himself. Naruto closed his eyes for a second and then asked, "So, what's the plan now that Albaido is dead?" When he turned to look at the other people, he saw that their faces were just blank. "Well, we hope you'll stay in the palace with us. Protect the village." Hinata said this with a big smile. Naruto smiled. He liked that idea. To be honest, when he looked at his dad, he wondered what he would think. His father had always been worried about him fighting. Maybe because he would sometimes black out. Now that he thought about it, he hadn't blacked out at all, and he could feel Albaido's madness and hatred, some of which was directed at him. But nothing. Naruto frowned and asked, "Why didn't I pass out?" "I think it's because you used to pass out as a way to protect yourself. When you felt threatened and didn't have a good way to protect yourself, you would revert to a primitive state," Shikamaru explained. That made Naruto blink his eyes in confusion. When you didn't think you could protect yourself, you would lose control of your body and give it to the part of you that only wants to fight to kill or protect itself. But when Hinata turned to face you, you didn't feel scared. Because she didn't want to hurt you. She wanted to help you calm down and relax. That did make some sense. He thought that, anyway. The young man shook his head and pushed himself back up onto his legs. He wobbled for a moment and then sat back down. Damn it. He wanted to get up and walk to the palace, but his body seemed to have other ideas. He was stuck on a chair and couldn't get up. Taking a deep breath, the young man tried again. He used what little chakra he had left after his long sleep to push himself up again. He felt strength in his legs for the first time in a long time. He was still a little unsteady on his feet, but it was better than nothing. The young man looked at everyone as he said, "I'm sorry. The palace is where I need to go. I need to make sure of something there." He had to talk with Kakashi. He was hiding a lot, he knew that much, but he didn't know what it was. He did know, however, that he had to see and do something to find out what was going on. No matter what. Is Kakashi still there at the palace? When Naruto saw that everyone agreed, he started walking to the palace. "Naruto, you should get more rest." With a frown, Hinata said, "She's right, you've used up almost all of your chakra." Ten said this with worry. "Everyone, I'm fine. I'm good to walk." Before he left his father's house, he said this with a big silly grin on his face. He waved at them and told them, "Don't wait up for me." He had a little laugh and then left. Naruto was hunched over and taking deep breaths as he tried to get himself together. His hands were on his knees. This time, the walk must have been hard on him because he didn't have enough chakra. When he looked around, he could see that the palace was still in good shape, even though Jiraiya had been beaten by Albaido. He walked ahead with a bit of a frown, not sure where Kakashi could be. When he sniffed around, he could just barely smell dogs. He didn't know why Kakashi smelled mostly like dogs, but he wasn't going to complain. As he followed the smell, he saw roses, daisies, lilies, and other kinds of flowers he couldn't even name. He has never been to this part of the palace before, now that he thinks about it. It was confusing and shocking, but at this point in his life, what wasn't? He sniffed the air again, then turned sharply and went down a hidden path. He didn't know why it was hidden, but he knew he had to keep going if he wanted the answer to his one question. Soon, the smell got stronger, which made the young demon stop near some bushes. The young demon moved the bushes out of the way and turned his head to see Kakashi sitting on a bench in front of two gravestones. One was pretty old because grass and flowers had grown all over it. The other one had just been found. Kakashi was holding flowers in his hands before putting them on each grave. Naruto couldn't see his face, but he could feel what it was like. It was kind of sad and kind of happy at the same time. But why would he even be happy to begin with? That didn't make sense to him, but he had to know the answer to something that had been bothering him. "Kakashi," asked Naruto. "Naruto, come sit down with me," Kakashi said, looking straight at the graves. Naruto gulped a little and walked over to the bench. He sat down and looked at the older man for a moment before turning back to the graves. Before Naruto could say anything, Kakashi had already begun to talk. "Rin and Albaido are buried here." Rin? Wasn't that the girl Albaido had a crush on? Why did he change his mind in the first place? Turning back to the grave, Naruto couldn't help but stare in amazement and wonder why. After everything he's done, he was buried next to her. "Kakashi, I want to ask you something," Naruto said in a soft voice and turned to look up at the older man. "Before I hit Albaido with the Rasengan, all of his anger and hatred had turned into acceptance. Why would that be the case?" For a moment, Kakashi didn't say anything. It almost made him question whether Kakashi knew the answer to begin with. Just as he turned away, not expecting to hear anything, Kakashi spoke, which made him stop and stare. Albaido accepted that he was going to die because that was what he really wanted. Naruto couldn't help but stare at him in shock. Why would he really want something like that? That made absolutely no sense to him at all. It just didn't make sense. What was happening? Albaido tried to kill himself many times after Rin died. Jiraiya never knew about it, but I did, and I was the only one. When Albaido thought about something else, it helped him forget about his pain, so he became very interested in it. Kakashi sighed and then went to Albaido's grave. Even after all this time, it still seemed to hurt his heart to know what his friend had really wanted. Even though it's not an excuse, his desire for power was just him being sad. A few minutes at a time, the training took his mind off of things until he remembered and tried to kill himself later. I'd tell him to stop, and this went on for years. "Albaido, how much did you miss her?" Naruto frowned and asked. He cared that much about her. Sometimes, who you love and how much you love them are out of your control. I'm sure that while Albaido was locked up, he kept thinking about Rin so much that it drove him crazy. He had hoped that when he got away, someone would be strong enough to kill him. When he saw you using the Rasengan, which not even he could control, he knew you were the one to kill him, Kakashi calmly explained, then leaned back a little in his chair and looked at Naruto. "You should know, because if you lost Hinata, wouldn't you be sad?" Naruto walked away and thought hard about it for a long time. Well, maybe not for long, but he knew he would feel that way to some extent. Naruto said in a whisper, "But because you are a demon, if you promised her you would stay alive, you would. If you're like your grandfather at all," Kakashi said with a chuckle. Naruto quickly turned to Kakashi and stared at him with wide eyes. "Oh, you knew my grandpa." "How?" "I knew him when I was young. Your grandfather was a powerful demon. He fell in love with a human woman and kept living even after she died. Knowing that he had promised to take care of their child and his people, he had to keep his promise. But her death had made him feel very weak." "No, that didn't sound right. I thought I heard Kurama and Sachai." Damn it all, he wanted more answers, but now he had to talk to his chakra spirits. "Kakashi, I want to ask you one more question before I leave." "What's that?" "Were you the person to whom I brought that package?" "Because your scent, it is just like it." With a frown, Naruto said, "Yes, it was me." "Then what did that package contain?" "I'm sorry, Naruto, but I can't tell you that right now. You'll find out when it's time." Naruto sighed when he heard the answer. He got up and started to leave the garden. Even so, Kakashi couldn't help but laugh a little as he took out a small thing. He had been looking for it for a long time and had finally found it. But at the time, he couldn't pick it up because it had a dark aura around it. He had to find a priest to take away the aura and send it to his village. Now that it was there, Naruto would be able to use it as soon as he was ready. I'll keep it until then. His father would want it that way, she said. Naruto made it to a quiet area. He needed to talk to Sachai and Kurama about it. If his chakras had joined together, they might have talked to each other by now. There had to be at least a chance of that. He closed his eyes for a moment and sat down on the ground in a meditative position. Then he turned his attention to his chakra network. Even though it was still weak, he could feel himself being drawn into his chakra. Kurama, Sachai, Naruto called out, hoping that the two chakra spirits would say something. But he didn't find anything. He could only see the flower field and the cherry blossom tree. So he knew that, in a way, the realms had become one. But other than that, he looked around and turned his head to try to hear something. But he didn't hear anything. Even though he was a demon, he couldn't hear as well as he should have. Yes, you are still stronger than a person, but you are still weaker than a demon. The young man shook his head and started walking toward the tree, hoping to find Kurama there. He couldn't think of anything else to do. But what he saw was so strange that he couldn't stop staring. There was Kurama, sitting under the tree with his arm around Sachai. Her head was resting against his neck, gently tucked under his chin. He slept with his head on top of hers. They were both fast asleep, but they looked so happy. How could they look so happy and at peace right now? Where had they been? Kurama's ear twitched toward Naruto, but the red-eyed demon just opened his eyes and looked up at Naruto. The demon yawned loudly and gently shook Sachai's shoulder, which woke her up as well. Wait, did chakra spirits even sleep? What's going on? Naruto. Kurama's voice, which was still a bit sleepy, came before he pulled Sachai up as she was starting to wake up. The demon and the other spirit walked toward him. This made him wonder what they were going to say to him now. At this point, he had so many questions but not many answers. I don't know what to say thanks. Thank you. What for? Asked Naruto. Kurama laughed and looked down at Sachai with love in his red eyes. A kind of love that was bigger than both life and death. Naruto almost wondered if his love for Hinata was that strong. You brought Sachai and I back together. I didn't know that she was the other half of your chakra. When you joined the two chakras, Kurama and I could see each other again and be happy again. I thought I'd have to keep looking for him, but when I found him, he was there the whole time. A wall was all around us. With a smile on her face, Sachai said. Because he was afraid to be himself, he built a wall. Now he thought he was a selfish jerk. Naruto, we are so glad we can be together. Now we can help you fight and never have to worry about being split up again. Kurama said this with a smile. Naruto turned away because he thought he was the worst person in the world. All this time, he had kept these two apart because he was afraid of becoming who he was meant to be. The young man shut his eyes tight and opened his mouth to say he was sorry, but Kurama put his hand up to stop him. Don't be afraid. You can't make us mad. You didn't even know what was going on. We sure didn't do it. Now that you can't change it, all you can do is be happy, which is all we ever want. So, why did you come to see us, Naruto? Asked Sachai, still smiling kindly. Someone told me that he knew my grandfather, and his story was similar to the ones you and he told me. I need to know, are you my parents? Naruto asked at last. Before they looked at each other, Sachai and Kurama just stood there and stared. They just stood there and looked at him. It seemed like they were trying to figure out how to tell him the truth. The young man took a deep breath and turned back to look at Naruto. Kurama then stepped forward and closed his eyes. That's right. Your grandmother is Sachai, and I'm your grandfather, Kurama. I'm sorry, Naruto, but I had to keep this from you because the truth wasn't ready to be told to you. Even more so because you kept denying your demonic roots. I figured I'd tell you when I knew you were ready, which I guess is now, huh? Naruto, we didn't mean to keep it from you. You've been trying so hard to stop feeling like an outsider that we thought we could help you become who you should be. Sachai added as she looked at her grandson with a frown on her face. Naruto looked at both of them and wondered if he could tell which one of them was lying. The young man shook his head and knew he couldn't hate them. Not even close, to be honest. I'm not mad, and I'm kind of glad you didn't tell me right away. I can see your point. I try to be someone I'm not, so I know how sad it would make you to hear that your grandchild didn't like who he was. Naruto had a small laugh before he spoke. I'm happy with who I am now. I'm no longer ashamed of anything. He laughed a little bit more before yelping and feeling both Kurama and Sachai hug him. As they held on to him, they both had tears in their eyes. Now, Naruto usually tells people to stay away from things like this, but he didn't care at that moment. He couldn't help but hug them both back. He buried his face in whoever was closest and just held on to them. He opened his eyes briefly and saw that his body was getting a little less clear. Still, his chakra wasn't strong enough to hold him in this realm. Looking at them, he said in a calm voice, "I shouldn't have left. Since you're both still tired from the fight, I'll let you both go back to sleep if that's what you call it." He laughed. Kurama and Sachai let go of Naruto and gave him a friendly smile. They were both glad to finally be with each other, but they were even happier to see that they could finally tell the truth about how they knew Naruto. "Naruto, we'll see you again," Kurama said as he held Sachai while Naruto faded back into the real world. When Naruto opened his eyes, he groaned a little because he still had one more thing to do. He had to tell Jiraiya what had happened between him and Albaido. The young man pushed himself up and made his way to the main hall in a shaky way, being sure that Jiraiya would be there. He was there most of the time anyway. As he walked there, the young man thought about what he would say. What would he say about the fact that his student was willing to die just to be with someone else? He took a few steps up, glad that the hall wasn't too far away. The young man opened the door and called out to Jiraiya as he shook his head. "Come in, Naruto," Jiraiya said in a calm tone of voice as he started to walk inside. "What would you like? I'm also glad to see you out and about," Jiraiya said with a calm voice. The young man sat down on the floor next to Jiraiya and said in a calm voice, "I have something to tell you. To be honest, a few things. Albaido used his Sharingan to try to take control of me, but because I had human blood, I was safe." Jiraiya opened his eyes. When he thought about it, the beatings he had taken had left his body covered in bandages. And when I used the Rasengan, Albaido accepted that he was going to die. Jiraiya turned his head away and gave a soft sigh. So grief had already taken over his heart. He would have just wanted to die even if I hadn't helped him. That's why Hiruzen didn't accept him. And that's how the prophecy came to be. What? A prediction? What was he talking about? I guess Albaido just wanted one good fight before he died, and his own mind had already been taken over by madness. What is the prophecy, Master Jiraiya? You only said that a warrior was going to be born. I had no idea what a prophecy was. With a frown, Naruto said. Jiraiya let out a soft sigh and tilted his head up. His eyes seemed to almost glaze over as he thought back on the past. Once, someone thought they were a hero. In the end, it turns into a monster. People thought it had a heart that was even colder than 0 to F. People are afraid that it was just a fake. A person who people thought was a monster turns out to be a hero. The once feared monster is no longer a 0 after the people saw how they could get ahead. People thought the monster was bad. It turns out that the monster is not a devil, but a creature with a soul. It has such a pure heart that it could beat the once great hero. For someone to be able to heal, they must be as pure as Shiro. But his heart is in danger of becoming dark. As long as it keeps living in fear and hate, it will lose its heart. If it doesn't feel love or compassion, it will surely meet its end. Hopefully someone will hear the monster's plight. It will either become dark and destroy the world, or it will become light and save it. Naruto was shocked and blinked. That was the prediction about him and Albaido, right? But that doesn't make sense to him, and it almost looked like he was dreaming. Naruto asked, "What does it all mean?" Before Albaido went crazy, he was seen as a hero. People thought you were a monster, am I wrong? But really, you are better than most people and nicer than most people in general. Still, you are in danger of going crazy like Albaido, but from what I've seen, Hinata was able to keep you from falling into that darkness. He took a deep breath and continued, "She was the key to helping you reach your full potential. You got to the real you, which was what was needed to stop Albaido." Jiraiya let out a soft sigh, then looked at the younger man and laughed a little. "I won't lie, I'm sad that Albaido couldn't move on, but he wanted it this way, to die along with Rin." This must have hurt Jiraiya more than anyone thought, since he thought of Albaido as a son. It must have hurt more than anyone could imagine to have to deal with something like that. "Master Jiraiya, I want to continue to keep the village safe." Naruto said this with a serious tone. The older man nodded his head and laughed. "You can, but you should focus on getting your chakra back. Still, you are very weak. The 5 will be able to take care of the village until you get better." Naruto grinned and nodded. He'll have to make do with helping his father for now. The younger man got himself up on his feet and said he would come back when he was better. As Naruto was leaving the palace, he couldn't help but look up. He got some answers, but he still had some questions that he wasn't sure he was going to get answers to. Naruto looked up at the sky and sighed softly as he thought about what his father had said about his mother. She used to be here, but now she isn't. Did she leave? Did she die? Ugh, he was having so many thoughts, but he didn't know what they were about. Maybe he'll find out the truth someday, but maybe it's just one of those things he'll never find out. He shook his head and smiled as he looked ahead. Hinata was there by the stairs even though his heart was beating faster. He couldn't help but smile at her. Maybe, for now, he should just pay attention to the here and now, which is Hinata and the others. As he ran to Hinata, he knew that his life right now was perfect as it was. Finish.
So this was the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, we weeb offline.